Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. It is Monday, June 8th, 2026. Good evening to you, too. And the time is 7 p.m. The Urbana City Council meeting will come to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu.
Here.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Hersey.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Wilkin.
Here.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Williams.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have quorum. All right, next we will have the approval of the minutes from previous meetings. April 6, 2026, Committee of the Whole meeting. April 13th, 2026, City Council meeting. April 20th, 2026, Committee of the Whole meeting. April 27th, 2026, City Council meeting. And May 4th, 2026, City Council special meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Wu.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin.
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes. All right, those minutes are approved. All right, we'll move to additions to agenda. I'd like to request that we add a proclamation to the top of presentations, if I am able to get a motion.
So moved. Second.
All right, moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin.
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes. All right, thank you. That has been added. All right, we will now move to public input. Any members of the public wishing to address the council, please come to the microphone, state your name, city, and you will have 5 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm from Urbana, Illinois, and I would like to address the planned multi-unit, multi-floor development on Main Street. Number one, it does not qualify for a zoning ordinance variance. One of the things that it includes is public anemones. I see very little. The architect mentioned there's going to be like a path incorporated to the boneyard. That's questionable. Also, I know Urbana has a strong commitment to the environmental impact of the boneyard. That's our little biogem with the improvement. I'd be curious what people from the Illinois Natural History Survey and the stream experts would say about the environmental impact of this project. That has not been discussed. Secondly, there is no evidence that building a multi-floor, multi-unit luxury housing is going to lower the rents in apartment housing. So I adamantly believe that this does not address affordable housing. And the proponents of this have not given us any evidence of this. Thirdly, the relocation of the tenants at 413, 419 are going to be, which include, I believe, 14 residents, will be displaced. I'd be curious if they're going to move into this new luxury apartment. There are better places for this to happen, or it can be scaled down. I ride my bike. One of the things I love about being in Urbana is the impact historic neighborhoods have on someone's psyche. It ties you with their past, aesthetically. I taught design at Parkland College for over 30 years. And I happen to know, and one of the things you learn in basic design is unifying things. The current design, in terms of scale proportion, is way out of proportion with the rest of the neighborhood. Similar shapes and lines also is a way of unifying things, and I don't see that here. The only thing this has in common with the rest of the neighborhood is a roof and windows. That's it. Lastly, I think Urbana needs to look at affordable housing holistically, especially with all these lots that are available in Urbana. That's thinking of the community as a whole, and I think that would be a prudent thing to do in the future. Thank you for your ears. Thank you.
Daniel Urban, resident of Urbana. I am the current president for the Urbana Free Library Board of Trustees. Later in the agenda, you'll be hearing the library's proposed budget for FY27, which our board will be voting on tomorrow. Many of you may know that our staff are currently negotiating the details of their first ever union contract. The vast majority of the library's funding comes directly from the city. What we are able to provide them goes through you. I understand the cost of living increase for this year has been set at 3.25%, and we are grateful for this helpful boost. We hope you're able to continue a similar rate in future years for the benefit of all city and library staff. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. We've got to stop meeting like this. I'm a Champaign resident and co-lead of Curbanism Club. I'm here to talk about the PUD on West Main. I don't know about the presentation, but I saw it on the agenda, and I would like to agree, as far as I understand, stickiness is part of the reason why I believe it's important to start building now. My understanding of stickiness is that it takes a long time for any changes in the housing market to affect the actual rents that people are experiencing. And so I think that's even more important. It's even more relevant as to why I believe we need to act now to start building the housing that will become affordable in our future, because we haven't built it, and now we are seeing the crunch. And who suffers from the crunch of our lacking housing? Because the people with enough money to buy housing anywhere are going to find a place to land. But it's the folks that don't have enough housing, that don't have enough money, that don't have a salary that can support living at market rate. So that's why we need to come at this from every single angle that we can. No one up here has said that 32 homes will solve our housing shortage, but continuing to refuse to build or act like a duplex or apartment is going to ruin a neighborhood or ruin a city. That will make our housing shortage worse. If we start saying that this kind of housing, that a certain kind of housing ruins a neighborhood or ruins a city, that's what makes it hard to move into that city if you stop building new things or new reasons for people to move to your city. I don't want anyone here to be without a home, which is why my colleagues and I worked so hard to try and pass a tax levy for the Stride shelter to make sure that community members are not discriminated against by landlords due to past involvement with the justice system. And that's why we've come to support groups like See You at Home with all of their versions of transitional housing and low barrier housing and mid barrier housing. We support housing at every level, and we think it's important for the cities, both of our cities. I go to Champaign City Council as well. I think it's important for all of us as a community to take on this responsibility to end homelessness and make sure that everyone has housing. And a lot of the things that were said at those other meetings were what people were saying here, that building a building is going to ruin this city and ruin this neighborhood. And I don't think that's true, because we've seen it happen where we're still standing. They built the transitional shelter, they built a mid-barrier shelter, and we're still here. And I hope to continue this conversation with you. I really want people to know that if we wait for buildings to be condemned before taking them off the market, exposes residents to health issues and very dangerous situations, especially if landlords have already given up on this maintenance. And believe me, I don't think that landlords or developers are inherently good people who are trying to just do a good thing. I believe that we need to build housing, and the way to build housing, I can't build housing, so otherwise I would be up there with a hammer and nails. So I'm asking you to work out how we can figure out a way to bring people together who can actually build the housing, because I think we need more of it for everyone at every level. The number of options that people have when they need to move is something that we can influence by doing things like building apartment buildings close to downtown and infrastructure that we've already invested in. I'm saying that as a community, we need to say yes to more housing and increase competition between landlords. And we can encourage more affordable housing by changing the policies that we have in both of our cities. We could offer up city-owned parcels to habitat, increase our rental assistance. We can talk about a rental registry to make sure that we're overseeing bad faith rental practices. If we need to put more teeth in the policies that we already have about discrimination, I would love to continue this conversation with you. It's imperative for us to work to end our housing shortage, and I hope today you will consider the current residents looking for a place to live, the future residents of Urbana, and the future of Urbana itself. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Alexander Rushing. I am a lifelong resident of Champaign-Urbana. I currently reside in Champaign, and I'm here to also speak in favor of the PUD on West Main Street. Housing development is it's key for the future of these two cities, and particularly, I think, for the future of Urbana. Champaign has been building, but even Champaign has a less than 2% vacancy rate across the entire city. That is not high enough. The vacancy rate has to be higher because 2% is what you get when the bare minimum number of people are moving around into new housing. Urbana's is likely even lower. This development, yes, it is larger than some of the existing developments around it. It is not out of scope with some of the buildings that have historically been built in West Urbana in the State Street neighborhoods. There are quite large apartment buildings in several places that have existed there for a long time. It is not particularly out of scope. I also want to speak about city character. Whenever the topic of housing comes up, people always talk about city character and the defense of city character as a reason for historic preservation and as a reason to avoid increasing housing density in a particular area. This is true. It is much less important for the character of a city than having people able to live there. When you look at a 32-unit development, those are people who are more likely going to be using bikes. They are more likely going to be coming right over here to do their shopping at Lincoln Square Mall, at the Schnucks that's just down the road over there. These are people who are going to be tightly enmeshed into the community. They are going to be looking at the bus system. They are going to be looking at biking. They are going to prefer that to cars. They're not going to have as many options for parking. That is something that will improve the character of the neighborhood. If there are people living in Urbana who want to go downtown, who are already right there, they're near downtown, they can just walk right over, that is real neighborhood character. That is bringing people in who are going to be invested in the future of this city and the future of the two cities of Urbana and Champaign. My grandparents live in California, where the apartment that they bought in 2002 when they downsized, the year I was born, is now worth the same amount as the house that they downsized from. That is not sustainable. They would not be able to move today into their apartment. If they had to sell, if they were in the same position but 20 years younger, they wouldn't be able to do it. They'd have to move to another town. They'd have to leave their community. With the lack of new housing, and they are building some new housing around them, but it hasn't been enough. It hasn't been anywhere close to enough for the number of people who want to live in California. There are a lot of people who want to live in Champaign-Urbana, and they should be given the chance to do so that they can become part of the Champaign-Urbana community, so that they can spend 40 years, 50 years, 60 years of their lives here and retire here and downsize maybe to one of these new apartments that need to be put up right now. Someone living in a big home needs to have a space to downsize into. A student or a grad student or a young professional needs to have a little space so that they can buy one of the larger homes later on in Urbana and stay there and contribute to the community for the long term, so that they can send their children to school in Urbana, so that they can stay there rooted in the community and developing a new generation of people who live in our communities. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Sari Yamaguchi. I am a resident of Champaign. I am not from Champaign-Urbana originally, but I attended school at the university, and I found it to be such a nice place that I went ahead and stayed. And what we have as a university town is something really unique. It's a constant population that is coming and going, many of whom are just starting out in their lives, and many of whom may find it to be a great place and want to stay there. And as Sasha had just mentioned, students and young professionals and people who simply need a smaller space may not be able to afford the large houses with lots of character that we know and love in Urbana, but may still very much want to contribute to the Urbana community and be able to establish themselves as part of this community. And, you know, building 32 units doesn't solve a housing shortage, right? A vacancy rate of 2% is too low, and that's probably not even going to move up to the next percentage point if we add 32 units, right? But we don't want to be playing a game of catch-up because it will leave us in a really bad place where, you know, we are then trying to address the shortcomings of an aging housing stock while still trying to fight for and approve more units to be built for people who, you know, can't live in their aging apartment or home anymore. And, you know, such a low vacancy rate, as we've seen in many other places, exposes tenants, exposes more marginalized communities who are then vulnerable to the predatory tactics of landlords, you know, refusing to do proper maintenance on their units or jacking up prices competitively, because with such a low vacancy rate, tenants become more desperate and more vulnerable to these tactics. So any little that we can do to increase the number of units is worth doing. After graduation, I spent some time living in Vermont, which is a really wonderful state, and I would really highly recommend anyone to go there. I love it very, very much. But it has a similar problem to what we could be facing if we do not build housing. It similarly has a vacancy rate in Burlington of 2.2%. It is a university town of a very comparable size to Champaign-Urbana. It has a much older housing stock than we do, and we saw the issues that caused, where rents were much higher than in Champaign. I was paying $1,700 for a one-bedroom, and this was not sustainable as a young professional. Although I loved the community, although I made many friends there, although I was very involved and, you know, doing public outreach through my museum job, it was simply not sustainable to stay there. And so I found myself returning to Champaign-Urbana, a place that has many great resources, a great community of both longtime residents and people who are bringing fresh new energy to the town, excellent resources, and just a really great community atmosphere generally. Something that I'd like to say about the proposed location and density of the new project: yes, it's a larger building than some of the surroundings. Yes, you know, there are single-family homes nearby it, but the size of the building is not so large that its residents would not be absorbed and participating into the community. In fact, it's a prime location where people could patronize local businesses, go down to the farmers market on a Saturday, as we all love to do, use the excellent bus system that is apparently third best in the nation, according to someone, which we are very grateful to have here. And on neighborhood character, not building these 32 units doesn't preserve the neighborhood character. It means that it goes and maybe sprawls somewhere else. We've all seen towns and cities in this country where zoning and, you know, blockages at the local level have created a suburban sprawl situation where we are heavily car dependent, where single family homes on large lots far from the city center end up disincentivizing people from going to the city center to do their business, from getting to know their neighbors, from being active participants in their community, and it creates a very antisocial atmosphere. And I don't mean in the social sense, I mean in the decay of social fabric and civic participation, right? If people aren't where things are happening, how can we expect them to be contributing to the community, to be involved and feel ownership of that community that we love so much, right? The character of downtown Urbana, it's great. More people should get to experience it. And I think it's just very important, as we consider this phase in our future, that we are mindful of where we might be in the future if we do not invest now in development. If we kick this can down the road and say there's somewhere better, while not building it anywhere else, or while extending our environmental footprint and sprawling and creating a more car-dependent infrastructure, where we have this excellent MTD system right in front of us. And yeah, I'd just like to express my support. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jared Fritz. I currently live in Champaign, but I've lived in Champaign and Urbana for the last 20 years combined or so. I want to address a few different things that I've heard across these meetings. Last week, it was argued by a number of folks, including, I think, tonight's presenter, Ms. Lenhoff, that Champaign-Urbana has built a lot of new housing over the last decade, and we still have not seen rents gone down, and that is objectively true. Rents have not gone down. Rents are increasing, but I think that can be a bit of an oversimplified way to look at those price pressures. There are other factors like inflation, rising construction costs, and a significantly rising university enrollment that have all played a factor here. So you can't just say that, we've built housing and rents have still gone up. You have to ask, what would rents be today had none of that development happened, had none of those new buildings happened? They would certainly be higher. So let's talk a little bit about stickiness. I'd like to use a little bit of a hypothetical. So if I had a magic wand and could overnight double the units of housing in Champaign and Urbana, what would happen to rents? I think it's pretty clear that they would decrease. So stickiness exists in our current situation when rental availability is really tight. That is certainly true. If we can continue to increase our supply, that stickiness will erode. It will wear away. It will go down. And still, even in this hypothetical scenario where I have this magic wand and we double the supply overnight, is anything going to change tomorrow? It's not. These things still take time. People are in leases that have a lot more time before they run out. So this isn't something that happens overnight. It's something that you have to think about. Like someone earlier tonight said, think about affordability. Think about housing holistically. Think about it in the long term. That's what we have to do here. That's why we need to think of units like this as more than just one project, how it'll impact one neighborhood. We have to think of how do we want to be building more housing capacity for our whole city, for our whole community, for everyone who needs it here. So compare that to what's, again, actually happened. Supply has not kept up with demand. Enrollment has grown. Hundreds of affordable units in the last couple of years have been neglected. They've been condemned, and landlords who are facing an extremely low vacancy rate have no reason to compete on price. So yes, housing pricing, rental pricing is sticky right now because of the situation that we're in. That's something we should work on changing. That's something that increasing the housing supply can and will change if we can proactively take steps to do so at this location and in other locations. And like other folks have said, this building is not going to solve housing affordability on its own, but continuing to block development in this city, in this neighborhood, or in others will continue to make the problem worse. Second, I want to address displacement. I think the displacement of current residents in the units that are there is a real thing, but I think it's something that is not specific to this project. If this developer wanted to build 4 gigantic, hideous single-family homes on these 4 lots, they could do that by right. They wouldn't have to come before Plan Commission. They wouldn't have to come before you. They could do that, and this would displace the same people. So that doesn't feel like an argument that is specific to this development. That seems like something about the way that we have prioritized zoning in general in our community. I want to talk a little bit about vacancy rate. Some folks have cited census figures to suggest that the market isn't actually as tight as the data shows. I want you to consider the fact of what actually counts as vacant in the census data. If you're looking at 12% data that comes from 6 or 7 years ago from the census, that is counting a unit that sits empty for 2 weeks between leases. That's counting a unit for a student who did not respond to the mail that they received and then was not here during the summer for the in-person visit. That is counting a unit that's undergoing a minor repair. So that number, for what it's counting, it's not wrong, but that measures something different than what actual available rental capacity looks like. Lastly, I want to tell just a personal anecdote. I've lived my entire life in Champaign County. I grew up in a small town outside of Champaign, small but growing town. My parents, my family, we lived in a single-family home with a really large field behind us, and it's great. I loved playing there. I have a couple siblings, my friends, my neighbors. We played there. Eventually, that became a big development. It became a bunch of single-family homes. It became a bunch of apartments, and that was a bummer. That was disappointing. So I empathize with. That's not something that I would have chosen for my neighborhood. That's not something that I would have chosen there. But should my family have been able to block that just because we liked playing in that field we didn't own? I would argue no. So I think we need to think about this, again, like someone said, holistically. What are we aiming for as a community as a whole? Does blocking this satisfy some people's preferences? I think it does, and those preferences are real, but we really need to think about the bigger picture here. So that's why I urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Hickson. I live at 209 West Indiana, and I am a longtime Urbana resident. I want to provide citizen input on two items that's going to be before the council tonight. The first is the PUD proposal for the 400 block of West Main that's been discussed that would effectively rezone the property from R2 to R5. I want to express my strong opposition to that proposal and urge you to vote it down for a number of reasons, many of which have been expressed to you earlier by other Urbana residents. It's fundamentally out of scale with that neighborhood. It's inconsistent with the city's comprehensive plan that says that it recognizes the importance of preserving established residential neighborhoods. We have a glut of apartment buildings, many of which were built in the West Urbana neighborhood to capitalize on high-cost, high-income student occupancy. And even excluding student-associated housing, Urbana is dominated by renters, with approximately 2/3 of households in the city renter-occupied rather than owner-occupied. If this proposal were adopted by the council tonight, it would be one more action to undermine the preservation of family-owned residences in Urbana. Now, I know you've already heard a number of these arguments expressed eloquently by other residents. I want to tell you a more personal story. And as I've gotten older, I've come to realize that if you live long enough, you can not only see things from both sides, sometimes you can see it from 5 or 6 sides. So I came to Urbana in 1964, I'm old, as a freshman attending the U of I. I spent the first 2 years living in the dorms. Then my junior and senior year, I got together with 3 other male students renting what had formerly been a single-family home in Woona. Our landlady was a very nice widow lady who had lived in that home when she was younger and raised her own family there, and then later rented it out to college students. Looking back on it, I'm pretty ashamed to say that we 4 student renters did the bare minimum that our lease required of us. And the property decreased significantly in value from our occupancy and that of successive renters. Even at that time, I was kind of vaguely aware that city staff were actively encouraging, or at least allowing, people who owned property in Woona to convert those properties into student rentals. It was a thing then. My wife and I left Urbana upon graduation in '68, but we returned 2 years later and been here ever since. We rented our first home up on West Hill, and we started our family, and we were more conscientious renters than I'd been as an undergrad, but that was a pretty low bar. Our first child was born there, and when a second one was on the way and we only had 2 bedrooms, we scraped up enough money in 1974 for a down payment, and our first home was just down the street on South Urbana Street. And you know what? Owning that place gave us an entirely different perspective to home maintenance and home improvement. We made a number of improvements to the place, and we left it in better condition than when we sold it. In '77, when Clark Lindsay opened up, a number of homes in Woona came on the market. We bought one at 207 West Indiana. We've been there 49 years and counting. We've made a number of improvements. We love our home, we love our neighborhood. It has increased in value. So here's the kicker. Guess where my first rental home was? 415 West Main. I know that neighborhood. The house I lived in there was condemned several years later as unsafe for occupancy and torn down. Here's the lessons I've learned. If a mid-sized college community is to be successful, it must support its homeowners. Homeowners invest in improved property more than landlords and renter combos. We have too many apartments already, and our Urbana city staff should spend more time supporting and helping homeowners. One last thing I wanted to support Mayor Williams's proposal for the renovation on Philo Road. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Murphy. I am a resident of Urbana. I'm here to speak on support of the PUD. I'm a resident of Wuna. I have rented in Wuna for the past 4 years, and I've rented homes in Wuna. And I think we maintain those homes. I appreciate the home that I rent right now. I struggled when I was looking for homes in Wuna to rent. Last year I graduated college, and when I decided to stay in town to work as a history teacher, I was struggling to find a place to stay. I wanted to stay in a similar location, but I was not able to find an affordable place to live. And I ended up finding some friends that allowed me to stay with them in their house. And I'm very appreciative that I am able to live in Wuna. And I appreciate Wuna, and I appreciate how bikeable it is. I'm also a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission for the city of Urbana. So I really appreciate that people are able to bike in Urbana, that people are able to move freely. I appreciate the old trees. I appreciate the brick roads. But I also appreciate housing. I appreciate access to housing. And as a history teacher, I appreciate the history, but I also know that we need to sometimes change, and that it's okay for houses to sometimes be turned into apartments, for houses to be torn down, and for apartments to be built so that people can move into those spaces and have homes. So yes, 32 homes is not going to solve our housing issue, but it will increase the number of homes available for our community. I want more life in our community. I want more life in downtown. I want more people to bike in our community. I want the continued revival of Lincoln Square Mall, which we are seeing. I want more people riding MTD. And I think we can't keep kicking this can of, oh, this isn't the right spot, down the road. We have to support development, and I think we, the city of Urbana, should support this PUD. Thank you.
Good evening, members of City Council. My name is Marcus Ritchie. I'm a resident of Champaign. I ask you to please vote to approve the planned unit development at 413, 419 West Main Street, which was recommended by your Plan Commission with a vote of 4-1. I have spoken in support of this proposal before, as it offers potentially the highest and best use that this parcel is likely ever to have proposed for it by an unsubsidized private property owner. People have asked some valid questions regarding housing, which I believe others have addressed very well, especially Jared Fritz and members of CU Urbanism. I would like to address a couple previously raised objections that has not gotten sufficient response, that this location is in the West Urbana neighborhood, and the recently adopted Urbana Comprehensive Plan says in the Dr. Ellis subdivision, historic East Urbana neighborhood and West Urbana neighborhood, the intent is to preserve single and two-family zoning where it currently exists. My response as a former planner with the city of Urbana is that this location is not in the West Urbana neighborhood. According to the Neighborhood Association map on the city's website, this area is in the purview of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. Wuna doesn't start until Springfield Avenue, 2 blocks to the south. I know that this map has not been updated in a long time, but that does not necessarily mean that it is not still in force. And if the Downtown Neighborhood Association is not still active, then the city should determine which adjacent association should represent the area. 2 older but still actively used maps indicate that the commonly held West Urbana neighborhood stops 2 blocks further south at Green Street, a total of 4 blocks away. These maps show the West Urbana residential parking permit zone as Florida to Green and Lincoln to Race Street, not up to West Main Street. Another map of the West Urbana legally non-conforming uses shows the same boundary, stopping at Green Street. You may note that the West Urbana Neighborhood Association's concept of its area of purview goes all the way up to Main Street. This is clearly not the same as the West Urbana neighborhood as considered by the city. My second point is that the two existing apartment buildings are actually legally non-conforming uses. They are multifamily in R2, which would not be permitted. When they meet the end of their useful lives, usually well past when they are comfortable to live in, and which some may say has already passed, they cannot be replaced with similar multifamily residential homes. They will need to be replaced with single-family homes or duplexes, which are great uses. However, instead of getting 32 units of market rate housing, at most the city will get 5 homes, 1 duplex, and 3 single-family homes. If City Council wants the land to be a park, then the city should buy it from the private property owner and donate it to the Urbana Park District and not expect private property owners to foot the bill. In closing, I hope that you will support this request, which was recommended for approval by the Urbana Plan Commission and will provide homes for 6 times as many families as the land could currently provide. Thank you for your service to the community.
Good evening. My name is Maddie Kangas, and I'm here to talk about the development on Main Street. I've spent 26 years of my last 3 decades on the 800 block of Main Street. And after spending 5 years in California, my spouse and I chose to move back to West Urbana, now in Ward 1, because of the character, history, and sense of place of this neighborhood that I'm hearing we all know and love. I want to be clear up front that I support adding housing in Urbana. I support adding housing in the proposed location. I support accessibility to walkable neighborhoods. I support creating opportunities for more people to enjoy the things that make West Urbana special. And I recognize that traditional zoning has often been used in ways that exclude people and reinforce inequality. But I also believe that supporting more housing does not require approving every proposal that comes before you. In my view, the question tonight is not whether housing belongs on these lots. I believe it does. To me, the question is whether this particular project deserves an exception to the planning framework that Urbana has recently adopted. Urbana recently approved a new comprehensive plan after years of public engagement and discussion. That plan reflects a community vision for how growth should occur and how different parts of the city should evolve. If we're willing to set aside that vision so soon after adopting it, then what confidence should residents have that future planning efforts matter? City planning only works if residents can trust that the adopted plans mean something. Plans should absolutely evolve when circumstances demand it, but I do not believe that this proposal demonstrates a compelling reason to abandon that framework that the city just established. I also reject the idea that our only choices for this location are vacant lots or this project is exactly as proposed. Cities across the country have demonstrated that it's possible to add housing while respecting the scale and character of existing neighborhoods. South Bend, Indiana, for example, has developed pre-approved neighborhood infill designs that allow developers to build more housing while maintaining compatibility with surrounding homes and streetscapes. And that's the kind of thing I think a comprehensive plan is worth adapting towards so soon after its approval. West Main Street is one of Urbana's most beloved historic corridors. People are drawn to it because of its architecture, its human scale, and the continuity with the city's history. Those qualities are assets not just for the neighborhood, but for Urbana as a whole. What concerns me about this project is not that it's a new building or that it adds density. The proposal asks the city to make a significant exception while offering a design that does not appear meaningfully responsive to the surrounding historic context. I'm troubled that the developers describe themselves as committed members of this community, yet there appears to have been little effort to engage nearby residents before bringing forward a proposal that requires these exceptions. No project will ever make everyone happy, but meaningful engagement could have produced a better outcome and a stronger project. I want to emphasize that I'm not asking you to choose between housing and neighborhood character. I think we can have both. Urbana should absolutely encourage more infill housing, including apartments and multi-unit buildings in walkable neighborhoods like this one. But that housing should fit thoughtfully within the context of the neighborhood and align with the city's adopted planning goals. A denial of this proposal would not prohibit housing on these lots. It would simply ask for a better proposal, one that adds housing while respecting the scale, character, and planning framework of West Urbana. I urge you to vote no on this proposal as presented, or at minimum deny the requested exemption in zoning and encourage a redesign that better reflects the neighborhood and the comprehensive plan Urbana so recently adopted. We can have growth, we can have more housing, and we can do it in a way that strengthens rather than diminishes the places that make Urbana special. Thank you.
Hello, Council. My name is Alex Suleric. I live in Champaign, born in Urbana. I'm here just to say I support the PUD development. I mean, last time I cited a couple studies saying how building market rate and even luxury housing can have ripple effects throughout the community and open up housing for more people to move into in the lower income bracket. Even somebody in the audience talked earlier saying when Clark Lindsay opened, units became available. So there's our, my point being supported yet again. So obviously this works in Urbana. The same economic principles work in Urbana. And I don't think we have any time to lose in terms of building more housing. We are in a crisis. I think we need to move this forward. And even in the description for the project, they said they would go above and beyond the R5 zoning landscaping requirements and keep the tree canopy as much as possible. So they are not just, it's not going to be just some box that's just like devoid of any life around it. It's going to be integrated within that plot thoughtfully. And that's it. All right, thank you, bye.
Dear Mayor and City Council, my name is Luke Beal. I grew up in Ward 1 and now live in Ward 2. I've been an Urbana resident for over 30 years and intend to live here for decades more. I emailed my comments earlier, so I'll try to keep this brief. I'm incredibly proud of our city's rich history, our focus on community, and our environmental sustainability. But I'm disappointed when people's futures and their opportunity to live in a great walkable neighborhood are rejected based on subjective opinions about aesthetics and character. For the benefit of our current and future residents, we can't treat our city as a museum. Urbana must adapt to meet residents' changing needs. Opponents may claim this will destroy our history, but this project doesn't tear down historic buildings. It focuses on 4 lots, including 2 that have long been vacant. There are even several apartment buildings successfully integrated nearby already. And a vibrant community doesn't just preserve the past, it writes its own history. By welcoming new neighbors here, we would write a better, more inclusive, and truly progressive chapter for Urbana, all while keeping our history alive. And when it comes to aesthetics, a building's exterior is only part of the story. Personally, I appreciate seeing the old mixed with the new. A thoughtful contrast can even make our historic home stand out even more, showcasing the natural progression of Urbana's history. But ultimately, a neighborhood's true beauty isn't measured strictly in brick and roof lines, it's measured in vitality. And beauty would be 32 households getting the chance to call these lots home. It would be seeing new neighbors cycling down the street, kids playing along the expanded Boneyard Creek, and families walking home from the farmer's market. That's what true neighborhood character can look like to me. Above all, we desperately need the housing. When 80% of local landlords report 0 vacancies, our lower income residents are forced into a bidding war that they can't win. Blocking new housing only fuels an exclusionary market, and this location is perfectly situated to absorb that demand, which simultaneously would open up affordable units throughout town. It sits right at the edge of downtown, bringing foot traffic to local businesses, and it's near MTD lines and grocery stores, reducing the need to be car dependent, and it accomplishes all of this while increasing our local tax base. Furthermore, this development is a massive environmental win. Building dense transit-oriented housing in our urban core lowers carbon emissions per resident. I know there's a desire for public green space on this block, and this project guarantees that. The developers dedicate the land 20 feet from the boneyard inwards and would direct funding to the city to physically unlock what could become a shared use pathway along Boneyard Creek. So if we want to continue expanding Urbana's Boneyard Greenbelt for everyone to enjoy, this project is the actual way that can make that happen further. And even the city's own planning staff formally recommended approval, noting how this project advances our sustainability and walkability goals. And the developer is even absorbing a massive cost to meet FEMA floodplain requirements, which is a financial hurdle that makes building with less density on these lots extremely challenging at best. Ultimately, this vote is a simple yes or no for developing these lots on Main Street. Either this project is approved or it is not, and we cannot afford to reject a tangible solution to our housing shortage while holding out for alternatives that don't yet exist. I ask you to please vote yes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Daniel, and I live in Urbana, and I'm also here to talk about the apartment development. Specifically, I spoke last week, so wasn't planning to get up, but I wanted to be in dialogue with someone else who was here because I, a few years ago, also as a junior going to the University of Illinois, rented a very nice old single-family home with a group of other students. It wasn't in the historic district. It was on West Oregon, but it was old enough to have a coal chute and a lot of the anachronisms of older developments. I also feel we were not the greatest stewards of that house. It is still standing, it is still being rented, and it is up to the landlord to do whatever they want with it if they are willing to let students do what they will with it. But if there were better alternative apartments available, there was no reason I needed to be in that specific home. I would have been open to other options, luxury or not, depending on the specific cost relative to the house and the location. I really wanted to be in Urbana, West Urbana specifically. The year before I had lived in Champaign, and I prefer Urbana. I feel that more people should be able to have the opportunity I did to move and now to stay. I still live in Urbana, and I am in a different apartment now that would probably be considered a little older. And the thing that my current apartment reminds me of is if you look on the zoning map, it is surrounded by R2 housing with a specific cutout for it for R5. And that's not because of what anyone feels is right or wrong. It was done that way because it was already that way. The houses surrounding it just as easily could have been R5, but they weren't because people preferred to keep it as is. But we can't preserve Urbana in amber. People want to move here. I want to remain here. And in order to accommodate those people and to grow our community, we have to maintain and build more housing. And so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Philip Garrett. I'm a resident of Ward 1 in West Urbana, and I'm opposing the construction of the proposed 5-story apartment complex on Main Street. After initially attending the last City Council meeting to contribute to public input, I realized that housing is a very critical issue and shouldn't be taken so lightly. Those in favor want to alleviate the need for housing and bring rent down, but does this proposal actually do that? I think that some of these arguments brought forth are rather assumptions in that prospective tenants need to already live in town and will open up housing for lower income Urbana residents. And two, it assumes that these tenants aren't already living in luxury apartments. So who will this actually help once it's implemented? The reason comprehensive plans, such as our current one, don't allow for these multi-parcel giant apartments isn't because it's not a good fit. But there are infrastructure concerns as well. Cities cannot just make the streets longer or widen land to accommodate more people. Consider this. As a luxury development, many of the 32 prospective tenants are going to have automobiles because they are making designated parking for just as short of that. But it will force some to park on the street. But what happens when you add 32 additional automobiles to added traffic on Main Street where there are no street lights and only stop signs? What will the impact be on the additional weight to the road, congestion at either end of Main Street, or the sublimation of these parcels adjacent to the Boneyard Creek, including runoff as well? A no on this vote doesn't mean I want to gatekeep this community. I really want to emphasize that. It's quite the opposite. I would love to share Urbana with more people, but this needs to be achieved by adhering to the city's comprehensive plan, which dictates definitively what is and is not allowed. It does allow, though, for 3-story apartment buildings, just not ones on this massive scale. At the end of the day, this isn't about a philanthropist who wants to make more housing opportunity for those who need it. This is a developer who willfully ignored the comprehensive plan and the local community they'll be impacting, deciding that they don't need to play by the rules to win. It's simply an attempt to make more money, profiting off the stewardship and care of the local residents who keep this historic neighborhood intact. What kind of message is sent if exceptions are made for those who did this? I encourage you to have them go back to the drawing board and develop a building structure that meets rules already set forth by the City of Urbana so that all parties can be happy by adding more housing while not compromising the neighborhood. Thank you.
Hello, Council. My name is Miriam Keep. I'm a resident of Urbana, and I live just a few blocks from the proposed planned unit development on Main Street. So I'm here to speak in favor of that development. I also spoke at the Committee of the Whole meeting and shared my own experience looking for housing in Urbana. I moved back to Urbana after coming here originally for school back in 2023 to take a job at the university. I knew I wanted to live in Urbana. I love being in close proximity to downtown Urbana and all that it has to offer. Had a really hard time finding a place that was available, stayed with friends for a while before I did find an apartment. And as I shared at that Committee of the Whole meeting, the first place I found, I saw rent increase 40% over 2 years without any improvements being made to my unit. And I continue, I've been fortunate enough to be in a position where I could move into a different unit still in the neighborhood that I love. But I just don't think that situations like that would be possible if we weren't experiencing a really dysfunctional housing market in Urbana, Champaign right now. We also have data from the Champaign housing study that shows there's a real need for increased housing in our community, rental housing, and that we heard other members of other attendees today speak about the downfalls of student housing. First, we live in a college town, so there's a student population that needs to be housed. Our rental to owner rates are pretty similar to other college towns like Ann Arbor. There's a lot of reasons for more transients in a college town. But we know from the Champaign housing study that the vast majority of the rental units that need to be built in our community actually are for non-students. People like me who came to this town weren't in a position to buy a home, but needed to find a place to live and really care about the community and care about making it better and wanting to be a part of this community long term. I also think that there are a lot of great reasons to increase housing in this neighborhood. As I've mentioned, I really love living here. I've seen others struggle to find housing, and I want them to have access to many of the same great amenities that I have. I ride my bike. I love being close to places, many of our businesses in downtown. And I also know it's really an important transit hub. And I've known people who have chosen to live in this neighborhood because they can be able to live without having to bear the expense of owning a car and can rely on our great bus system or on biking. So I think that it's a really great reason to support housing in the neighborhood where this proposed development is. I've also heard a lot about the importance of zoning in our comprehensive plan. When I first came to Urbana back in 2015, it was as a student to study urban planning. And so one of the things I learned is that there are good reasons we have zoning, but there are also reasons we have variance processes and why there has to be flexibility built into our zoning codes to respond to unique situations. And one of the things I've heard over the course of multiple meetings about this proposed development is that this is a really challenging area to build on. Due to the flood zone, as others have mentioned. And we know that there have been other attempts to develop housing that have failed because they can't that have failed without having this density. Regardless, I think we need the density. I walk in the neighborhood a lot, so when I hear that this proposed development doesn't fit into the neighborhood character, I get a little bit confused. One of the things I actually quite like about Urbana is I think a lot of our neighborhoods are quite eclectic, but there are lots of other multifamily developments on that street, and I think this would fit in just fine. I would be excited to welcome new neighbors to our community and to have more people to support our local businesses, more people to contribute to our communities. So I really would strongly urge that you approve this development. And last thing, I do think it's very much in line with the overall goals of the comprehensive plan. We know that there's a need for more housing and that we want to do infill development. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight about issues that will shape Urbana's future. My name is Annie Adams, Chair of the Urbana Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission and a proud resident of West Urbana. Tonight, I urge you to support Plan Case 2519, the proposed development at 419 West Main Street. This project is not just a policy decision. It is a pivotal opportunity to make Urbana more livable, inclusive, and vibrant for everyone who calls our city home. But first, I'd like to thank our police and fire departments and those from the surrounding areas who pitched in to help this weekend with large-scale events in Urbana. I'd like to brag and say our city has the best police and fire departments in Champaign County. We appreciate all that you do for our city. These are only two of the reasons I'm proud to pay taxes to the city of Urbana. Another reason, it might sound silly, but the fire hydrant in front of my yard got a new shiny coat of orange paint last week, and it looks great. I appreciate all the effort our city workers and leadership put into long-term planning for our city. I'm also proud that Urbana has a smart, equitable stormwater tax earmarked for repairing our sewage system. As any homeowner knows, repairing today will be cheaper than repairing it in 5 years or after a major incident caused by worn-out pipes. Unfortunately, when I reviewed the capital improvement plan you are voting on tonight, it looks like the money earmarked for the sanitary sewer fund is going into the general fund, leaving a $1.78 million deficit by fiscal year 31. Why is this happening? As someone raised in a working-class household with 9 kids, I'd ask the same questions of my parents. Why do we have to buy the Kmart shoes when other kids get the Nikes? My guess is a similar answer my parents gave me is what the city of Urbana would give me. The city of Urbana simply does not have enough income to cover its basic needs, a challenge we must address head on if we want to continue providing the services and quality of life our residents deserve. Citizens of Urbana, can I ask, why is this happening? Meaning, when the city next to us can meet their basic needs, pay their employees more, have a co-responder team with trained police officers and behavioral health advocates and new bike lanes, create a downtown plaza, make drainage and sidewalk improvements to Garden Hills, and many other things. Short answer, they are building housing, large, small, short, tall, and in between. Every new resident they add to the city brings state and federal funding to the city, schools, and local businesses. Yet, despite their best efforts, Champaign still faces a 2% vacancy rate, far below the healthy range of 5 to 7%. The recent housing study showed a need for 7,000 new units by 2035, including 6,452 for non-student residents across all income levels, which is what my husband and I were when we moved here. We rented first in Urbana, then we rented in Champaign, then we bought in Urbana. So there are people like us trying to figure this out just along with the students. This isn't just their problem. It's a regional crisis that touches all of us. Our state is short by 142,000 units and will need to build over 225,000 new homes in the next 5 years to keep up with demand. That's 5 years. Housing shortages, just like any shortage, raise prices. By building these 32 new homes, 19 one-bedroom, 13 two-bedrooms, we take a concrete step towards welcoming new residents, supporting local businesses, and freeing up existing housing for families already here. This relieves pressure across the city and keeps housing attainable for all. Why are not rents coming down? Aside from the housing shortage, everything is more expensive. Every year you delay fixing, fill in the blank, it will cost you more money the following year. For 10 years, I and many others have advocated persistently for more housing options in Urbana, and each year the cost of building new housing rises. I know this project will not solve our housing issues overnight. If approved, it will still take 3 to 5 years for these homes to be built and occupied, but we must start now to address our future needs. This 4-story building will feature solar panels, dedicated Borneo Creek frontage to the city, On and on and on. Let's transform these unused spaces into vibrant homes and lasting community assets that benefit everyone. These 32 new homes may not be Grand Victorian mansions or low-income housing. And some of my neighbors have raised concerns that Urbana is building these homes for middle-class families. I have no idea why that's a bad thing. My husband and I, after years of renting and finally buying our very first home in Urbana, can say we have clawed our way into the middle class. And college is incredibly expensive, you guys, incredibly expensive. And I agree with what the first person said. We need to be looking at all kinds of housing options. I lived in a converted SRO low-income housing in Chicago. It was great. Not part of our zoning right now. And like somebody said at that time, she said, so I have students sleeping in hallways in hotel rooms because we have housing zoned out. I said, yes, that's correct. So I just want to say, let's come together and say yes. Let's build abundantly, Urbana. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. We have a few emails, so I'll start with Mary Ellis. Thank you.
Thank you. This first email is from Dr. Bishop King James Underwood and Reverend Evelyn Underwood. Please read this into the record. City Council, please vote down ordinance number 2026-06014, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a lease at 1717 Philo Road, Suite 16. I have more, but do you want to just go around?
Yeah, no,
Robin?
I thought you were keeping going.
I'll keep it going then. Okay. Dear Urbana City Council, please read this email as public input at the next City Council meeting. I've been a resident of Ward 6 in Urbana in the Stone Creek neighborhood for 25 years. Prior to that, we lived in Ward 5 for 20 years. Both neighborhoods bordered the Philo Road district. When my kids were growing up, they used to ride their bikes to Sunnycrest Mall, to the baseball card shop, and I felt they were safe to roam the neighborhood within a certain distance from our house. It is certainly not safe to do so now. Over the years, we have seen the Philo Road area deteriorate into a place where a lot of crime takes place. Please refer to the Urbana Police Department map of crime statistics. Almost all businesses that used to be along Philo Road, quote, business corridor, end quote, have closed or moved, namely Walgreens, CVS, and Planet Fitness just in this past year. I support Mayor Williams' plan called the Philo Road Ahead Initiative. It seems logical that the first step is in revitalizing the Philo Road Business District is to decrease the crime that occurs there. That is a no-brainer. Yet my elected representative for Ward 6, Ms. Wilkin, voiced her opposition to the Urbana Police Department's proposal to lease 2,700 square foot in Sunnycrest Center for a community engagement and violence prevention office. What could be wrong about violence prevention, especially right in the midst of the neighborhood where the most violence occurs? I attended a community forum in our ward soon after the police chief, Larry Boone, was hired, in which Ms. Wilkin presided over, where the community members attending voiced support for exactly the same ideas of community engagement, such as an addition of social workers, behavioral health workers, and clergy to join forces with the police to address many of the types of calls the police get. Now that the police department wants to implement some of these ideas, she is against it. In talking to my neighbors, there is a great deal of community support for just such an idea as this Community Engagement and Crime Prevention Center at Philo Road. We all hear the gunshots. I urge the City Council and my elected representatives, Grace Wilkin, to move ahead with common sense and vote yes to lease space in the Sunnycrest Center for the Urbana Police Department to establish a Community Engagement and Violence Prevention Office. Sincerely, Patricia Richland. I have three more. All right. Dear Urbana City Council and Mayor Williams, the Urbana Historic Preservation Commission voted to recommend landmark status for the Urbana Civic Center in its recent June 3rd, 2026 meeting. City Council will soon be asked to consider landmark status for the Civic Center. I urge you to vote against landmark status for the Civic Center. Why? The Civic Center site has been identified as the only site for a downtown Urbana bus transfer station. This transfer station would be built and operated by CUMTD. The MTD has successfully obtained significant federal funding for infrastructure projects, the downtown Champaign terminal, among others. CUMTD has stated that, quote, if the Urbana City Council votes in favor of landmark status for the building, MTD will not submit a grant application for the project, end quote. It is without argument that downtown Urbana would benefit from a bus transfer center. The basis of Urbana Historic Preservation Commission recommendation is problematic. Many of their arguments are based on adaptive reuse. What if the Civic Center can be reused? Both City Council on April 1st and the Preservation Commission on May 6th heard a presentation from Vince Gustafson, Director of Public Works, and Troy Richmond, Public Facilities Supervisor, on the state of the building. Their analysis: the entry sidewalk, the entire roof, the single-pane glass walls, the entire electrical system, the entire plumbing system, the entire HVAC system, and the entire kitchen would need to be replaced. What's left? Perhaps the brick corner pillars and crossbeams. Adaptive reuse is simply a slogan when there is nothing to be reused. Understandably, the Preservation Commission values the history and memory of the Civic Center. Understandably, the Preservation Commission would prefer adaptive reuse. Unfortunately, the message from the building is DNR, do not resuscitate. Landmark status for the Civic Center would represent the first instance of a structure in Urbana which is currently not in use and of which the current owner is unable to find a use for the structure. Deny the landmark status. Paul DeBevick, 303 West Nevada. Dear City Council members, please read out loud, and hopefully the outside influencers do not prevent neighborhood voices to be heard. Please listen to the neighbors living in the neighborhood and not outside influencers who want to destroy it and turn it into a 9-month student ghetto. If the current landlords who have neglected the properties cannot fix them up, then perhaps 3 nicely constructed duplexes like the ones on Washington Street can be looked at. I think the architect's first name is David. Very creative and gives a neighborhood vibe unlike the proposed unsightly monstrosity. Thank you, Lois Steinberg. And last but not least, this is kind of long. Okay. To the Urbana City Council, please accept these comments for the record and read them in during the meeting. I am a resident of Ward 3, and I urge you to support ordinance number 2026-05013. Voting in favor of the planned unit development, PUD, would be a step forward in addressing Urbana housing shortage. It is not a large step, but it is a meaningful progress. Every new home that is built creates opportunities for people to move into housing that better fits their needs, which in turn frees up other housing units throughout the community. The movement of people into homes should be celebrated and encouraged. Professionally, I have worked with people experiencing homelessness and survivors of domestic violence for more than a decade. During that time, I have watched the search for housing become increasingly difficult. Day after day, I see individuals and families competing for a limited number of available units. Those with greater financial resources almost always prevail. Meanwhile, landlords have little incentive to compete on rent, fees, or amenities when demand far exceeds supply. This reality is especially difficult for people with low incomes, fixed incomes, or housing vouchers. Even when assistance is available, many households struggle to secure housing because there simply is not enough homes. Housing has become an artificial scarce resource, and scarcity benefits those who already have the greatest economic power. Increasing the housing supply will not solve every housing challenge, but it is a necessary part of the solution. When communities make it excessively difficult to build housing, shortages worsen and prices rise. Denying this PUD would move Urbana further in that direction. Approving it would send a message that Urbana welcomes thoughtful development and recognizes the need for more housing opportunities. I appreciate the sincere desire of many residents and officials to help those with the least economic power find stable housing. That goal is admirable. However, short-sighted policies that prevent new housing from being built often end up harming the very people they are intended to help. This property would develop vacant land that is currently not serving a housing need. Suggestions that private property should remain permanently undeveloped or be converted into public space without a broader plan do not address the city's housing shortage. Urbana needs more homes, and this development would contribute to that goal. I ask the council to do 3 things. 1, approve the PUD and allow additional homes to be built in Urbana. 2, develop a comprehensive housing and homeless strategy that includes affordable housing, housing for low and fixed income residents, starter homes, and effective responses to homelessness. 3, choose policies that promote welcome, opportunity, and inclusion rather than exclusion and scarcity. Finally, I encourage the council to reject the idea that rental housing or certain housing types should be confined to only a few parts in the city. Every neighborhood should share in the responsibility and opportunity to providing housing for people across a range of incomes and life circumstances. Thank you for your consideration and peace. Sincerely, G. Brewster. I'm done.
Oh, you read the one that I had, you read, and I don't know about some others.
I had a stack over here. Sorry.
I've got one that hasn't been read. Dear City Council, this comes from Lois Steinberg. Dear City Council.
No, we already did Lois.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
did Lois.
I missed that.
I guess I did them all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you to all the members of the public who spoke out today in person and the emails that were sent. We appreciate you. So, All right, next we will move on to the reading of a proclamation. At this time, I am going to ask the ladies of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated to please come up to the front as I am going to present a proclamation to Alderperson Chandra Bishop. I'm messed up. How you doing? How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you too. Hey there. How are you? Good to see you. How you doing? How you doing? Hello there. How are you? What's going on, John? How you doing? Good to see you. What's up, man? How you doing? How you doing? All right. I guess I'll face you all here. All right. So this is a proclamation honoring the life and legacy of Chandra Bishop. Whereas the city of Urbana mourns the passing of Chandra Bishop, former Ward 5 council member, public health professional, advocate, and devoted public servant. And whereas Chandra Bishop was first elected to the Urbana City Council in 2021 and was re-elected in 2025, representing residents of Ward 5 with dedication, compassion, and the steadfast commitment to equity, public service, and community engagement. And whereas, throughout her tenure on the Urbana City Council, Chandra worked tirelessly to improve the quality of life for Urbana residents, championing accountability to policing, neighborhood preservation, affordable housing, public health initiatives, and policies designed to create a more equitable and inclusive community. And whereas, Chandra believed that public service was deeply personal and rooted in trust, often stating that politics was not a game, but an opportunity to better the lives of people in her community. And whereas, beyond her elected service, Chandra devoted her professional career to public health, applying her education from Quincy University and Western Illinois University to improve health outcomes, expand access to resources, and advocate for underserved populations throughout Illinois. And whereas, despite being diagnosed in 2016 with stage 4 cancer, Chandra faced her illness with extraordinary courage, resilience, and grace, continuing to serve her community, maintain her professional responsibilities, and inspire others through her advocacy and determination. And whereas, her strength, optimism, and unwavering commitment to helping others made her a source of hope for countless individuals, both within Urbana and throughout the broader public health community. And whereas, Chandra's legacy will endure through the policies she helped shape, the lives she touched, the causes she championed, and the example she set as a leader who served with integrity, empathy, and purpose. Now, therefore, I, Deshaun Williams, Mayor of the City of Urbana, Illinois, do hereby honor and celebrate the life, service, and legacy of Chandra Bishop, and extend my deepest condolences to her family, friends, colleagues, and all who were privileged to know and work alongside her. And be it further proclaimed that the City of Urbana expresses its profound gratitude for Chandra Bishop's year of service and dedication and recognizes her long-lasting contributions to the community she loved. So thank you all. All right, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to take this. Love you, Mama. I'm going to take this and deliver this to Anita, Chandra's sister in Chicago. I wanted you all to be a part of this, so thank you so much. Appreciate you. All right.
Thank you.
I feel like there were bets going on if I would cry or not, and that survived. So. All right. So we will now proceed with the presentation entitled The Stickiness of Rental Pricing and Why Rents Don't Tend to Go Down, presented by Council Members Evans and Wilkins. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we will have Claudia Lindhoff, the Executive Director of the Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, discussing the rental market in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. And Claudia, as soon as you're ready, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I apologize for my voice. I'm not sick, but I'm getting over a cold. I wanted to address the issue of whether building new apartments inherently creates affordability and rents downstream. So this is an argument based on the economic principle of supply and demand. And I think that some of the questions we have to ask are, has new construction in Urbana ever led to rent reductions? Is it really that simple about supply and demand, or are there other factors that impact rent pricing? Is Champaign-Urbana a typical housing market, or are there unique aspects that affect rental prices? And if prices do come down, how affordable do they actually become? So in terms of the question of whether new construction in Urbana ever led to lower, more affordable rents, first of all, Urbana has had significant construction. These are just a few examples that comprise about 700 units. It's not a comprehensive list, but you can see in the last 10, 20 years, there's been a lot of new construction. So the question is, do rents come down or have they come down? The simple answer is no. And from Google AI, which aggregates a bunch of different market data, the response is that in Urbana, Illinois, there is little evidence that new construction has caused nominal rent prices to fall. Instead of lowering rates, new developments generally introduce higher priced premium units to the market, while older apartments maintain steady or increasing rents. Rental prices in Urbana, Illinois have risen by roughly 3% to 9% year over year. Are there other factors that impact rent pricing beyond supply and demand? Yes. Even in situations where there is an abundance of housing supply, prices often remain high or continue to rise. This suggests that there are other factors at play. And some, just to name a few, are that construction of the types of housing that don't match the need of most renters. For example, luxury apartments, when 22% of the Urbana population who are renters have a rent budget of less than $1,000. So there's a mismatch in what is needed. Some other factors, again, it's the high-end focus. Also, property managers' reluctance to lower rents, preferring instead to offer amenities and incentives like free parking or a free first month's rent while maintaining the base rent. So if they have vacancies and they're trying to attract new residents, they will often offer one of these other things rather than lower the rent. And of course, most housing is for profit, and people are trying to make money off of it. Another factor is algorithmic pricing. The use of revenue management software by corporate landlords has become widespread, optimizing rent pricing and maximizing building occupancy at higher rates. Stickiness in economics refers to resistance of a price, wage, or other economic variable to change quickly. And I don't mean immediately, I mean even over a period of years. And rents are considered one of the absolute stickiest prices in the economy alongside wages. Economists classify housing as a source of sticky inflation because rent changes only occur in very long cycles and are highly resistant to immediate market corrections. So some other factors, there's an article here about the affordability paradox, why rents stay high even as supply surges. And it says America is delivering more apartments than at any other time in the last 40 years, yet rents remain stubbornly high. This contradiction frustrates policymakers, confuses renters, and alarms investors. And the question of, is Champaign-Urbana a typical housing market, and does supply and demand work the way that people think it should? Actually, Champaign-Urbana as a whole is considered a rent growth leader. So if you have money and you want to make an investment that's going to turn a nice profit for you, you get into developing housing. There's a study here by Griffin Capital, an analysis from 2023, where they said of the top 150 markets in the country, 18 are experiencing rent growth of greater than 6%. Champaign-Urbana is highlighted at number 3 among the 18 rent growth leaders. Likewise, in 2018, Illinois realtors cited Champaign-Urbana as the most lucrative college town for landlords. And they go on to say, Champaign landlords average more than 14% yields. How many businesses average that kind of yield? Not very many. Those in Urbana were 6th in the nation with 10.9% yields. And then another study or report by Matthews that provided a market overview for Champaign-Urbana said that notably, properties that are 10 to 20 minutes from campus have demonstrated even greater rent growth at 8.7%. Even off campus, that's where a lot of the more lucrative housing markets are. Now, just a quick word about algorithmic pricing. I could do a whole presentation just on this. This is a huge issue. In 2022, ProPublica did an investigative report on RealPage, which is an algorithmic pricing and management platform, and they found that the proprietary algorithm is hurting competition and creating anti-competitive practices. So when people talk about supply and demand, there's an inherent assumption that there's going to be competition. But now here's this other factor that is leading to anti-competitive practices. And RealPage is being actively used in our community, and in fact, they had a 2023 analytics blog stating that apartment performance in Champaign-Urbana bucks the national trend. Operators still pushed rents a strong 5.4% in September above the market's 5-year average. So many property managers in this community do use that method of pricing. There's been some stuff in the news about it. Pricing of rents as a result of new construction. Submarkets are really important. So submarkets within the same overall housing market can experience different trends in supply and demand and ultimately price. A June 2026 study by National Low-Income Housing Coalition found that new market rate apartment buildings actually increased rents in lower priced nearby buildings. So if rent prices do come down, I'm sorry, I know I'm just blazing through this, but you have the materials and you can look at it. But let's talk about if rent prices do come down, how affordable do they become? So what's a good vacancy rate in order for prices to supposedly start coming down? The standard is about 7%. Whether it's 7% or up to 15%, everything that I've read says that rent prices may drop down by 1 to 3% year over year. But most landlords, rather than reducing rents, would rather offer amenities like free parking or the first month's rent free, rather than lowering that base rent level. And let's talk about what 2% rent reduction is. Is it really affordable when, for example, a $1,200 a month rent comes down 2%, that's $24 a month. People would be saving tens of dollars per month. To me, that's not affordable. I have people living in hotels because they can't find a place to live and they have incomes. And they've been there for a long time. So, will new construction of for-profit, higher-end apartments lead to more affordable rents in Urbana? The answer is no. There are too many other factors beyond the simple economic principle of supply and demand. New construction may be helpful to provide more options for housing for those who can afford those new places, but it is not the answer for creating real affordable housing for the lower income people. And housing vouchers are not always readily available, nor are the quantity of housing vouchers enough to meet the local need. Again, I have people who have been waiting for vouchers, who have been living in hotels for over a year, waiting for a voucher. So that's not the answer either. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions, discussion?
Yes.
Oh, Sharice, sorry, right next.
Wow, that's a lot of information. So why did you push the tiny homes?
Well, first of all, Hope Village is nonprofit, so it's not a for-profit housing development. It didn't displace any residents. There were no houses that were torn down to build Hope Village. It was built on an agricultural field, and we pushed it because people need a place to live, and medically fragile people need accessible homes that can be managed and where we can also provide some of that case management and direct healthcare services that people need.
But it's not actually going to help any, at least from what I got from your presentation. It's not going to make a difference with the rents or other people that won't be able to get into those 30 units.
Well, it'll be 30 units of extremely affordable housing. I mean, as far as I know, that's one of the only new developments that's completely nonprofit and that is designed specifically for permanent supportive housing. And
how long will it stay nonprofit?
I'm sorry?
How long will it stay nonprofit?
It'll stay nonprofit for as long as it exists. There's no intention to sell it off and make it for profit. We have a nonprofit organization, Hope Village, Inc. It's a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization, and there's a board of directors, and it has a mission, as every nonprofit organization is supposed to do, and that's the intention, is to keep it that way.
Okay, and so you're saying, though, that no new building of anything else, though, is going to really make a difference as to whether or not we have a lower rents or anything. Like, one thing that would make a big difference that I didn't hear anything about is the fact that Illinois has a ban on rent control.
That's correct.
Okay, now I feel, having lived in rent-controlled housing in California for several decades, I really think that that's the bell you should be ringing.
I agree with you. The lack of rent control is one of the factors that makes the supply and demand issue sort of a non-issue in terms of like bringing down rents. And I should have listed that as one of the items, and I agree with you, and I would love to see that in the state of Illinois. But the lack of rent control plus all these other factors and the algorithmic pricing that keeps making sure that owners of these apartment buildings and so on continue to make a profit is part of the reason that rents will not just automatically go down just because you create new apartment buildings, especially the higher end ones.
Well,
and in
with
fact,
that argument, there's no reason for us to ever build anything in Urbana again. We just wait for everybody to die off, and then their kids will sell their properties.
Well, I'm not making that argument. I'm not against new construction per se, but what I'm saying is that the people who are advocating and saying that you have to build it so that downstream rents will come down and people can afford to live there. I'm saying that that argument is not going to work. It hasn't worked. There's no history of it ever working in our community here. And you all can check it out yourselves. You can Google it and ask the question and see. But there's no guarantee that, with all the new construction that downstream rents will come down. Landlords are not doing that. Instead, what they're doing is they're offering, free parking or 1 free month of rent, but they don't want to lower that base rent. Because why? They want to make a profit. And, that's not inherently wrong. It's just that we have to understand that if we want to create truly affordable housing, especially for the folks who are on the lower ends, it's not just going to happen happenstance as a result of new construction. It's going to take a really concerted effort and new methodologies and new actions. I don't think we can look at a new apartment building and say, in 5 years after that, the rents over here are going to come down as a result. It's just not how it works in our community. So.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Seeing that. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right. Our next presentation is Boneyard Creek West, creating a park and greenway from downtown to campus, also presented by Councilmember Evans and Councilmember Wilkins. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Ilana Matkowski and Dennis Roberts will be sharing about saving the Boneyard and to acquaint the current council and new staff persons about our community history with the Boneyard Creek, Urbana's most significant natural feature. The city has long considered the Boneyard to be a potential green space and public pathway connecting downtown Urbana to Creekway improvements already completed in Champaign, Campustown, and the University of Illinois campus. Mr. Roberts, you have the floor when you're ready, sir.
This is really going to be a rather different kind of approach to have a conversation with the council. It should not be angst-filled at all. It should be, I think, visionary and kind of positive. And it started long ago when we thought about the Boneyard as something. Here's early images of the Boneyard Creek. Well, it was just a creek going through the city, through the countryside, through the village of Urbana. Like many small communities that has a creek, then water was an important thing next to the big grove. But in 1978, because of flooding and issues about drainage, the city began to consider a serious plan about how to control or to coordinate development of a plan for the Boneyard Creek. That discussion and that planning was on hold from 1978 until this century. In 2008, Mayor Laurel Pressing initiated an actual plan and developed an excellent 5-segment plan for beautifying the Boneyard Creek and making something of it rather than just a sewer line or a channelized metal box waterway through the community. And the resulting plan that was adopted, I have a copy of it here as well, and you'll find it online, created a very beautiful scenario for appreciating the only natural resource that we have in this town. Otherwise, we have maybe a swamp someplace, but we don't have a mountain, we don't have a hill, we don't have a woods, we have a creek. And so we should be accepting it and enjoying it. We should be celebrating it. Well, one section of the 5-unit plan was developed. It was built. Construction occurred. It was incredible to see. The Arts Commission was involved in decorating and choosing sculpture and relief tiles to be placed on the Boneyard Creek, and it was dedicated in 2008. But the plan only addressed the Boneyard Creek's eastern edges across the city of Urbana. And the reason was that there was TIF funding to design and work on a plan for the east side of the Boneyard Creek. But unfortunately, the TIF ended pretty much where Strawberry Fields is, and the western side, which is really the more important side, was not envisioned. But this is the part that is more important to the community because it would then connect us with the completed positions of the Boneyard Creek and the plans that are both in Campustown, City of Champaign, and the University of Illinois. So those start across the rest of the community, and they're already completed, but they end at Lincoln Avenue. Well, one of the very most important sections of any plan that would go westward is what I call the Golden Triangle. And it was really the property owner, Darrell Fossey, who led me to be aware of how important this piece of property really is, and any kind of idea of completing a pathway from downtown Urbana to the campus and join the rest of the Boneyard programs that have already been completed. At that time, Darrell Fossey owned 2/3 of the property, and he was very anxious to sell it to the city. He would like to see a plan where this would become a parkway, because really, in a sense, already it was a park. Also, it's in the floodplain. But he could not get the city to be interested in this process. Mayor Satterwhite just didn't have any interest in it. But Mayor Pressing said, well, she was interested. And we walked, the city council walked, and the city officials and the city staff and the public works director walked the Boneyard Creek together, and we looked at it. It was a natural park waiting to be accepted by the community, which was also one of the plans that always comes up in any kind of planning document within this community. People are looking for a place to have a green space near the downtown where they could enjoy communing and meeting with each other and enjoying a park in the downtown. We don't really have a city square that is a park like some communities do. We do not have West Side Park in this community. We're trying to find a place to have one. So during that walk, we saw that there was all the subsidence and the houses along the creekway. Many of them were owned by Darrell Fossey, and they had to be taken down because their foundations were ruined. This is a picture of the floodplain, and you can see it easily fills the triangle, which is what I call the Golden Triangle. Well, we had a conversation with Senator Dick Durbin, and he sent Bill Houlihan, one of his staff members, to walk the creek with us. And Darrell Fossey was very happy to have him. And he told us that it would be very easy to get FEMA funds to develop a park in this area because it was in the floodplain. That it would be something that FEMA would be interested in resolving, and that it would be a good community asset. It would be an asset to the community. And he felt that there was possible funding for it. The city council in 2017 passed a resolution of support for the very idea of making a plan down to connect downtown with through the western Boneyard area. It is also in the TIF district. So the TIF money now, this is the new TIF district that was created after the one that stopped at Strawberry Fields. That was extended westward, and so the Golden Triangle is in the TIF district right here. So here's a list of all the associations, the organizations, and the important and interested people who were part of a steering committee that was brought together and had 2 meetings to talk about the extension of the Boneyard Creek plan to the west. But at the third meeting, we found out under the recent administration that Mayor Marlin, that this whole process was canceled. There was no pre-warning, there was no discussion, there wasn't a public discussion, there wasn't a vote. It was just canceled. The meetings were called off because it was preferred to go and support the Kickapoo Rail Trail. It's like you can't do both, you can only do one. Well, what's the future for the Boneyard? Can we ever get something going on and divide and make something out of it? So there's classes at the University of Illinois, the landscape architecture class LA 537 did a whole semester's conceptual realization of Boneyard Creek. And they came up with all these beautiful plans. They maybe were, the students use it as a teaching opportunity. Well, so what do other people do in other communities with their creeks? I just want to show you 3 examples. Here's the Bluegrass Creek in Louisville, Kentucky. This has become an amenity for that community. Here we have the Cherry Creek Trail in Denver, Colorado. The small creek, just like ours, but made beautified and usable by the community, and it's very much enjoyed. And here's something a little bit more different, the 606 Bike Trail in Chicago. It's a huge success. People are on it all the time, and people bicycle back and forth through this neighborhood in Chicago. Think about the things that you would do to beautify the creekway. You would add amenities, some material things that are interesting to look at. You would add interesting pathways, walkways, maybe different materials that you would have on the ground to incorporate into your design. You would enjoy play structures for children. You would add these to your the pathway along the trail. And you would maybe have support public art. And this is public art that's found in other communities in similar kind of situations. So yeah, when you go west, there's a lot of challenges. When you have a plan, there's a lot of it is not very attractive today. The only place that really is available to us is in the Golden Triangle. So what do you do with the channelized thing? You try to make the channel beautiful, and it's possible to do so. There's ways of conceiving of it. Look at this. There are all the orange squares are available empty lots that are available in this community for development. So what is it going to be? Are we going to use the one part that is a beautiful park for the park and imagining something for the Boneyard Creek, or are we going to drop a 4-story building on top of it?
All right, Mr. Roberts. Do we need a motion to extend?
That's okay. This is my last slide. This is my last slide.
All right, go for it.
So
finish strong, sir.
What I'm saying is that let's start making a real plan and really start considering it to make the Boneyard Creek multi-use pathway from the west to the downtown Urbana to the University of Illinois campus and connect the missing mile. It's good planning. It creates opportunities. It makes enjoyment for the community, and it can be an economic stimulus for the downtown.
Awesome. Thank you. Are there any questions? James.
Thank you, Dennis, for this presentation. I missed back where you had the list of the committee that was involved.
I do.
Was there someone from the Park District on that committee?
I'm sure there was.
Okay, I didn't see.
They're interested in larger pieces of Parkway, so they didn't become a very super supportive, but they were interested in talking about it. But we also had people from, well, there were just so many people. I guess you want to go look at that slide again.
So was the philosophy then that the city was going to move into operating a park?
Well, what do you do with the Boneyard that's already beautified? Are you operating it? Are you maintaining it? There's a section that's over there by Ray Street. How does the city deal with that?
We are maintaining it.
You are maintaining it, yeah.
But are we operating as a park? I wouldn't say we are.
It's a park-ish way. It would be
we don't have
a bicycle path.
We don't have a park department in the city because we have a park district.
Yes, but you are supporting the creation of bike trails, aren't you? There's bike trails all over this community, up and down every street. Well, you could be along the Boneyard too. After all, the Boneyard is a natural public entity. It's a public amenity.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any other thoughts? Chris?
Just a real quick question. Dennis, are you suggesting that if this apartment complex gets built in that space between 413 and 419, we wouldn't be able to beautify the back section of that Boneyard Creek area?
Well, the most likely area that could become an extended, a wider part of the Boneyard Creek pathway is really in the center of that triangle. But I would expect that any kind of development would likely be on Springfield. And I'm not against the idea of having apartments facing the creek. I mean, that would be an amenity. But I would think that you would want them on Springfield, which is a business road. That Main Street would be the part that you would want to enter the park, because you would be entering it also from the north, where if the Creekway plan was completed, Section 1 would come in right at Strawberry Fields from the north. And it would go behind what used to be Denny's Cleaners and where the adult education building that was recently destroyed or demolished. It would come down from the north right into the triangle at the Y. So, and the part that is the most easy to develop is the north half, because the south half has a street in it. It's an alleyway. I think the city actually owns that alley. And you would expect that there would be development of other kinds of structures, maybe apartment buildings facing Springfield, because Springfield already has apartments on it. That would be more appropriate. But the north part would belong to the community and to the city, to the neighborhood, and it would be an amenity. It would be different. So if you drop an apartment building right in the middle of that, yeah, it kind of spoils the ambiance. You can't really build anything wider than a strip along the Boneyard Creek, but I think the Boneyard Creek deserves more, as we've seen at Race Street and over to Broadway.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. Any more? All right, Mr. Roberts, we appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I'm an advocate.
All right. I don't know if that applause was for me or Mr. Roberts, but either way, it's fine.
Either one.
All right. We will now move to council input and communication. Any members of council wishing to speak, you may do so at this time. Mary Alice.
Thank you. I just wanted to congratulate a new bookstore in Lincoln Square, Spineless Books, which is awesome. So they just opened. I encourage everybody to go check it out. They not only have books for sale, but they have art for sale as well. The second thing I wanted to mention was that one of the commentators today had talked about working with the city to donate land to Habitat. City has actively been doing that for many years. We have many properties that we have dedicated to Habitat and that have built new construction on them. There was also a mention of potentially having a rental registration. We also have a rental registration program. And then I think the third one was, and I put teeth down here, so more teeth to like not housing protection, but human rights protections. And I think we have a pretty strong one, but I'm always open to hearing about other ways that we can strengthen that. And then the third item I just wanted to talk a little bit about, there's been certainly a lot of public who've been very interested in this PUD. There's been different news articles and so forth. And I just kind of wanted to finish part of the story that I had talked about a while ago, which is, yes, I got into city council because of a building that was being built and proposed right next to my property, touching my property. I didn't like it. I didn't like it because it was huge. It went from 3 stories to 5 stories. So I really got involved with the neighborhood, went knocking on doors and so forth. That did not make it. But at the end of the day, we have an apartment building, and that's totally fine. Like, we have an apartment building there. It was built by right. It has, 3 stories of apartments. I'm not against apartment buildings. I just want to make sure that the apartment buildings that we have fit within the fabric of the different neighborhoods. There's not one size fits all, but I think that, and I'll get a little bit more into that when we go into the PUD, but I just wanted to kind of clarify that, yes, I got into city business because of a building and zoning, but the end result was there was a building. So it's not that I don't want any building. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary Alice. Anyone else? Sharice?
It's been interesting hearing all the comments tonight, and I'm still left trying to understand what the definition of character of a neighborhood, I guess, is. And I also know in my gut, because I push single home ownership, because I do believe that when someone owns their property, they have more skin in the game, so to speak. But I also know that in my ward, we have huge amounts of apartments, mostly, of course, for students. And I've pushed before, and I've said something before about the fact that it appears to me that those rents aren't going down, because why would you, when you know every August you got a gangbang full of young people coming in there needing a place to live. It's mostly students that live in that housing. We do have some regular folk that live there, but I'm sure it's only because they can afford to. I do feel that the more housing that we have available, the competition will go up. It's like bacteria. When you have that competition, one bacteria, and they're competing for the same nutrients, one of them is going to eventually die out. Well, it can be like that on some level with the housing situation. I'm not saying one will die out, but you're both going to have to compete for the same nutrients. And if you have to compete for the same nutrients, eventually, hopefully, you'll both go down in what you need or what you think you need. The cost, I know, of living all over this country has gone up. But the other thing I know is that I lived in Los Angeles for almost 25, 28 years. And I lived in a rent-controlled building. And in the 20 years that I stayed in that building, my rent only went up $500. Okay, it still got to a point where I couldn't afford it, but that's only because my income went down. And I think the thing that we should be pushing for, and that many of you might want to push for and lobby for more than anything, is to remove that ban on rent control in the state of Illinois, period. I think our housing situation would definitely be mitigated on some level if those of you that don't want, that want to have more choice, actually work for people to have more choice and have that rent ban removed.
Thank you, Sharice. Don't be bacteria. All right, Burdell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to give a special thanks to Urbana Police Department with handling a violent situation over the weekend. Now more than ever, we're living in crazy times, and our support from our police and our local police departments are huge right now. So I just want to say thank you for that. I want to thank you to all the voices who came out, all the emails, all of the emails. There's a lot of them, but I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys coming and speaking your voice, because that's what true democracy looks like. And be honest with you, I still haven't made my mind up yet. I got a whole bunch of notes for it. But that's what I love about this position, is that I get to hear from the people directly, from your voices, and I feel the passion from both sides. So I just want to say thank you all for coming out and truly speaking from your heart.
Thank you, Verdell. All right. Seeing no further council input and communication, we will now move to unfinished business. An ordinance number 2026-0. Huh? Huh? No, not yet. Talking about unfinished business. I got this, Sharice.
I'm sorry.
All right. Bacteria. All right. Ordinance number 2026-05-013, an ordinance approving a preliminary and final development plan for a planned unit development at 413 through 419 West Main Street, plan case number 2519-PUD-25. Community development, if you guys want to CD, do you want to come up? No? Comments? All right.
You said comp discussion, or?
Well, this,
No, yep. So he was just checking that there wasn't an additional staff presentation or report first. So at this point, are there any questions from the council? We are only at questions because there's no motion on the floor.
Staff are available to answer questions, but we do not have an additional presentation prepared at this time.
okay. Grace?
Thank you. Yes, I also want to appreciate the continued input in that this is a complex issue here. I think warrants this important consideration. Questions, Olivia, if you and your team could help clarify a little bit more about the right-of-way for the path along Boneyard Creek, is that tied to a separate agreement, and if you could give us a little more info.
Yes, thank you for the question. The Boneyard Creekway permit was approved in April for the proposed development at 413, 419 West Main Street. That was introduced to Plan Commission and approved administratively by the zoning administrator, as is defined and described in the zoning ordinance. The Boneyard Creekway permit dedicates a 20-foot easement from the edge of the creekway into the property itself and is dedicated to the city of Urbana. That creekway permit also required that an improvement fund be contributed to, so the developer would pay into a special improvement fund for realization of any future development within that Boneyard Creekway easement area along that 20-foot dedicated portion of the property.
And is that tied to this particular development in PUD?
That is correct. That is tied specifically to this particular development and property.
And you said the developer would pay into this improvement fund?
That is correct.
And what's that amount, or is it like a proportion to be determined? Or?
It's currently being determined based on the final zoning or the final density of the project, but it could range up to $10,000. A one-time contribution of up to $10,000.
And what would be the plan for kind of the future path? Like, I imagine the path would be more than that. What would be the plan for the rest of the funds?
For the rest of the funds?
To build that pathway.
Oh, yes. So the
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'll ask the public to please quiet down as they continue the communication. Thank you.
The Boneyard Creek Master Plan was introduced in 2008, and there's a lot of the zoning ordinance and the Boneyard Creek Master Plan contemplate a connected shared use path through different parcels of land that run alongside the creekway. And the plan for the Boneyard Creekway is to essentially accumulate enough parcels of land that are not city-owned, these are privately owned parcels, through these dedicated easements to patchwork together a shared use path, which was actually described fairly in Mr. Roberts' presentation, it's sort of this green ribbon that would provide amenities to the public running through what is now privately owned land and connecting city residents to different green amenities, including the currently city-owned Boneyard Crossing at Race and Griggs.
But is that currently in the budget, or that would be the plan for money to construct this path?
Well, we don't own any of the, that's why we're trying to, that's why the Boneyard Creekway permits exist, because we don't own the land that's adjacent to the Creekway. The vast majority of it is in private ownership, so we are seeking public-private partnership through development to accumulate enough critical mass to realize the shared use path. So this development actually would be the first step towards unlocking a downtown green ribbon in terms of having sort of critical mass to actually realize a shared use path in downtown Urbana.
I don't know if we continue this discussion past tonight, it might be helpful for me to have some more understanding of what's kind of the plan and where that money would come from.
Yeah, the staff would be happy to present on the Boneyard Creek Master Plan and share details about that.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, I'm still not quite understanding where the money would come or how that would work, but I would like to, so thank you. And then other question was about, there was something mentioned about an agreement for keeping a tree canopy. Is that a thing? I didn't see that as one of the conditions for the PUD.
I can't speak to that. That was not described in the PUD application or contemplated by the developer or staff. I do know that anecdotally in the public open house, which went out to residents within 800 feet of the project site and was publicly posted, it was held on April 30th. I do remember anecdotally again in discussion, there were some residents who were curious about what would happen with those mature growth sort of trees that are on the site. And I know that the renderings were made basically removing the trees because the trees were sort of like obscuring the proposed plans as rendered. But the developer and architect who were present at the public open house did mention that they were going to make every effort to preserve the trees that were on the property when possible.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I don't know if at some point, if the mayor is chair, if the architect or anyone else would like to comment on that. I'm curious if that is kind of a non-binding agreement, if that is a thing, if it's a binding thing. I'm curious about the tree canopy agreement. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I don't have an answer for that right now. So, Mary Alice.
Yeah, I'm just, and Olivia, I apologize if you don't know the answer off the top of your head, but typically, I'm just thinking of the multi-use path that we're trying to build on Florida right now, which is about 3/4 of a mile. I want to say it was about $1 million. Does that sound right to you? 3/4 of a mile for $1 million for a shared use path.
City engineer is looking that up as we speak.
I'm pretty sure that's around that price. The reason I bring that up is because I'm thinking, okay, if we are able to do a shared use path, what does that look like? What is how much is that going to cost? And on the boneyards, it's going to even be more complicated. So I'll be really nice and say it's $500,000. All right, thank you.
I think the shared use paths we could certainly discuss design and cost in terms of feasibility, but the number one sort of the initial requirement is that the city control the land. And at this stage, we do not control the land.
Chris?
1.76 million is the answer.
Olivia, just to be clear though, the developer is just giving the city the 20 feet, and it will be on the city and the cost to the city to improve it, correct?
That is correct. The land, the 20-foot dedication would be from the edge of the creekway into the property itself, and that would be dedicated to the city of Urbana.
And the improvements would be paid for by the city of Urbana, or taxpayers, the city of Urbana, right?
That's correct. I do want to just mention that the height of this room, the ceiling height, is maybe 9 to 10 feet, if that helps visualize what 20 feet could look like for the public.
Grace.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot one more, but since we're still on the Boneyard Creek path, is there a expiration date on that agreement? I think maybe you had mentioned before, like if this PUD doesn't go through, that agreement permit thing is scrapped, correct? And then, but if it does go through, what about timing that, say if this does go through and construction won't start for 1 to 2 years, what is the timing if this is or is not approved?
Thank you for that question. I would love to be able to follow up with an email that gives you the specific reading from the zoning ordinance, but my understanding off the top of my head is that the Creekway permit is valid for 1 year if no activity or if no action is taken in part by the developer. And therefore, if this PUD were not to move forward tonight, the Creekway permit would still be valid, but for, I think, like 10 months from the date of approval, which was in April. Or so 12 months from the date of approval, which was in April.
That would be valid for 10 months, even if PUD is not approved?
Yes, just to be clear, the Creekway permit is valid for 1 year. Yes.
And that's just a separate process? Sounds like that's a process outside of this specific case, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. So if, for example, if this development were to move forward by right, they would also need a Creekway permit. It's just any development that is occurring within the Boneyard Creek Overlay District triggers the need for a Boneyard Creekway permit. And so the applicant moved forward with that before pursuing an application for PUD because they wanted to ensure that that would be taken care of and sorted before moving forward further in the process.
And so if, say, this PUD passes and construction starts 2 years from now, would they kind of automatically renew that permit each year or before construction?
That's what I would like to confirm. I believe that, yes, the permit would need to be renewed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Grace. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move approval of ordinance number 2026-05013, ordinance approving preliminary and final development plan for planned unit development at 413 to 419 West Main Street, plan case 2519 PUD 25.
I'll second.
Motion made by Grace, seconded by Verdell.
See if I can speak to the motion.
Sure, go for it.
That I am in support. I'm fine with moving along. I'm also open to, I have a few things myself, points of information that I would like clarified, and especially if others, I'm definitely open to continuing the discussion as well as a friendly amendment to the motion.
All right. Do I need another motion with the amendment being made?
So if my understanding, Grace, correct me if I'm incorrect, you were kind of leaving it open to discussion in the will of the council that if there were other members who were interested in a friendly amendment to continue this item, that you would be willing to entertain it at that time. Is that correct?
Correct. Thank you for interpreting.
Yep. But at this time, we're just going to proceed with discussion of the motion on the floor, which is to approve.
Okay. Mary Alice.
Thank you. I first want to say I spent quite a bit of time listening to everybody, reading everybody's notes. And so I kind of wrote down my thoughts yesterday morning in preparation for tonight. And of course, there were more people that came and gave us more information today. So I'm going to try and edit on the fly as I go here. But I just wanted to make sure that I covered what I've been thinking about over the past couple of weeks. So before I begin, I want to say thank you to everyone who's participated in this discussion, everybody who's come, who's given us letters, who's met outside. I really appreciate the engagement from the community. There's a lot of people who have spent quite a bit of time to attend the meetings, to share their perspectives with all the council members. And so regardless on where we all stand on this application, I think that that level of civic engagement reflects a really engaged community. And a community that really wants to see Urbana move forward into the future. So thank you for that. I also believe that there have been several concerns raised by members of the public that we deserve a thoughtful response on. And some of what Claudia talked about is some of what I'm going to talk about a little bit with a slightly different bent to it. So I want to kind of address three things here. I want to address affordability. We've been talking a lot about market rent and affordability, planning and urban design, and then kind of the city's planning and approval process that we have to go through. I'll get started there. So much of the support that I've heard tonight and in previous nights has been regarding kind of this filter concept where if we build new market rate housing, that things will filter down into the market and it'll open up more affordable housing as people move into these higher income households. So this body of research absolutely is out there. It is something that a lot of people use when they're thinking about affordability and market rate housing. It's also most of the time in really big metropolitan areas. Somebody mentioned California today. California, Boston, New York, these really large areas. And as Claudia had pointed out, the question is, does it work here? So if we think about what do we have in common with some of these other metropolitan areas, and whether or not it's apples to apples, apples to oranges, apples to grapes, I don't know. I actually went and looked up the exact same buildings that Claudia talked about. So we had the cottages at Illinois, Hugo, the Den. I went and looked up online to see, are there any openings? Like, we're coming into August, and August, like, if you don't have your apartments rented now, you're in trouble for the next year, right? So the Den had everything open, every type of apartment open except for a one bedroom. I don't know how many, but I know they had every type. Hugo had every type except for the classic 4-bedroom. That one was closed. So just poking around a little bit, it's certainly not an academic paper, but I can tell you can find at these high rent places right now, you can find different apartments and in different compositions, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, et cetera. So they do exist out there. And I do want to kind of bring to mind what we've been talking about in Champaign, where people are talking about a housing study that was done. So I actually downloaded that housing study. One of the things I do is methods, and so I'm trying to figure out, like, what proportion of landlords actually responded to this survey? What does this represent? I couldn't find anything in the methods. Not to say that they don't have it, but I can't find it in the documentation. And the reason I bring that up, because 2% is very surprising to me. It's very surprising given what I've seen when you go onto apartments.com. So I guess my question would be is how representative is that Champaign housing study of 2%? And what types of buildings are they talking about? All right, so now I've completely gone off script. So regardless of where you stand on this filtering theory, there's kind of two things that we know here, right? One, we know that the tear down of these existing ones will remove 8 existing apartments. That's just certain. That's a fact, okay? The second piece is a little more speculative. Do we know, will this eventually down the road impact rents? And so since I've been on city council, I've been here for 10 years, and we have approved hundreds and hundreds of new apartment buildings. And I looked at the census data, and I looked at the American Community Service data to figure, American ACS, American Community Survey, to see has affordability gone up or down? Not even talking about numbers, right? Like, let's look at the percentage of people who are rent burdened. Like, has that gone up or down? Has that stayed the same? I'll tell you what, it has not gone down. It has gone up. There's different numbers out there. It roughly is around 35, 37%. That's for the county, not for Urbana. All right, so my second point was, my second concern relates to the physical design of the project. What do I mean by this? I'm not talking about like the exterior and what it looks like and stuff. What I'm talking about is actually the mass here. So how is the relationship of the physical design of the project and its relationship to the surrounding built environment, all the other buildings that we have around each other? So one of the most fundamental principles of planning and urban design is the concept of transition. Right? So in transition, that basically means that as a development intensity increases, and decreases. You want to have a transition. You don't want to have these really, really tall buildings and really short buildings, right? You want it to kind of gradually go down or gradually go up. So my concern with this is that this is a pretty large building. And in fact, if you look at like Strawberry Fields, it's like 1 story. There aren't a lot of buildings in downtown that are this mass. So it's going to look really awkward and odd. It doesn't give you that good transition between the downtown and between the different neighborhoods. So last but not least is really about, and we've been talking a lot about this, but I just want to iterate. When I came in 2016, and we would have these planning cases come up, and I was like, what is this? Why are you guys always talking about the comp plan? Like, this comp plan is like 11 years old. Like, why? Why do we keep talking about this comp plan? And so, my second term, I was like, we need a new comp plan. Like, this is crazy. We have to update it like at least every 20 years. So what did we do? We updated it. We had lots and lots, years of gathering public input and having presentations and so forth, and conversations at the Planning Commission, at City Council and so forth, and we approved something within the last year. It is brand spanking new, okay? And in that, we really struggled, right? We struggled with some of the needs of how do we grow our city smartly, and how do we maintain some of the character of our city, and that compromise that came out of that is Neighborhood 1. And in Neighborhood 1 is that small residential area. That was the compromise. And when we did that, we said that we need to maintain R2 where it currently exists within West Urbana, Historic East Urbana, and the Dr. Ellis subdivision. That's what we did. That was the compromise, okay? So I feel, regardless of how we define those areas, I know that the public defines West Main Street as part of West Urbana. I know that. But I feel it is a disservice for us to suddenly say this comp plan that we passed less than a year ago shouldn't be applied. I think that's a disservice. And then last but not least, I feel strongly that whenever you have a PUD in front of you, we're granting flexibility in return for something. And in return for something is generally a public amenity. And I know we've been talking about the boneyard and everything, and it would be great if the developer actually built the multi-use path. I mean, but we're doing 3/4 of a mile for $1.75 million. I mean, this is not cheap. So I don't see any public amenity here. And the reason I bring this up is because I feel like if we say, okay, well, we realize this doesn't exactly match our comprehensive plan. In fact, it kind of goes exact opposite. And we also don't really have a public amenity. Then what's the purpose of the comp plan and the PUD a public amenity? That's what's really got me stumped here. So I've said my piece. I'm happy to have that conversation, discussion, but those are my thoughts.
All right, thank you, Mary Ellis. Anyone else? Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm all for this apartment complex getting built. And we should have a groundbreaking ceremony tomorrow morning with those cool golden shovels. At the same time, I'm not going to disrespect the taxpayers who have already invested $1.1 million of their tax money to build residential developments in downtown Urbana. So a table for 32 units of luxurious apartment living has been prepared and waiting at Race and Grigg Street. Thank you.
All right. I'll wait till Grace gets seated. We have a motion for the approval of ordinance number 2026-05-013. Clerk, again, correct me. We're needing to, I know that Grace made an amendment, but we need to first pass the vote for the original motion on the floor, correct?
So the only motion on the floor presently is the unamended motion for approval, but Councilmember Wilkin had just raised her hand when you started to speak, so I don't know if she was going to clarify that or if she was going to administer an amendment at this time.
I'm happy to clarify. I do have discussion. Thank you for stalling while I snuck out to the bathroom.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
I think that's an accurate interpretation of, yes, motion was to approve, just saying that I'm open to a friendly amendment if we did need to keep this in council for more information.
Okay, Mary Alice.
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of seeing the writing on the wall. It's pretty quiet in here. I would ask Grace if you would be open to a friendly amendment, which talks about more of a dedication of funds than 10,000.
Grace?
Can we clarify where, I don't even know how that would happen, I guess, questions for staff and exec. That sounds like is that a separate permit process? I don't see that tied to this PUD where we would change that.
That would be outside of the PUD process. So I'm not quite sure. I would need to consult counsel. I don't think that you can just arbitrarily assign exactions. I think that it needs to follow a process within the zoning ordinance or the code.
Because that's part of the Boneyard Creek permit, not the PUD, right?
So it's just to clarify, the contribution to the improvement fund is a specific section of the Boneyard Creekway permit that's triggered if you partake in the 12-foot bonus density, and the applicant chose to partake in that bonus density, and so it's calculated based on the total square feet that's additional as a result of that. And all of that is available and documented through the Boneyard Creekway memos, but with that said, the Boneyard Creekway permit section of the zoning ordinance has an actual calculation for that fee, so anything beyond that would be outside of what is codified.
Thank you. And then would you further clarify, this is new, I don't know if we've had Boneyard Creek permit stuff before, so this is a learning thing.
Yes, of course. Actually, yes, I do want to just say this is actually the first project that I can find that has contributed to the improvement fund. So we are definitely in uncharted territory.
And so you're saying that fee calculation is in the zoning ordinance, and this would apply to any property developing anything along the Boneyard Creek, it sounds like, right?
That's right. If it partakes in that specific Boneyard Creekway bonus, then it triggers the calculation for the contribution to the improvement fund. And I will do my best to try to find that section of the ordinance now.
Thank you.
James.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to raise a concern. I've been thinking about this, and I will tell you that I am supportive of the idea that where this property is located, it's on the border between downtown and this neighborhood. And so I am supportive of additional housing in this space. But the challenge that I have is the process. The thing that I'm concerned about is when we bring a proposed PUD and the final PUD to the process at once. There is not, I've been through a couple of PUD processes, and we've had a preliminary PUD where council has given feedback to say, this design is too tall, or this design is too dense, or this, we need more amenity. And that didn't happen with this. This came together in one fell swoop, both through the Planning Commission and then to City Council. And so while I am leaning and on the side of this is a good place for some additional housing at the border with downtown and this neighborhood, I'm also conscientious of how it impacts the neighborhood and how the neighborhood over time has tried to defend the character that exists further west. I will say a block and a half further west, but and so I feel like when I hear Grace talk about a friendly amendment, I don't know what's possible with regard to a friendly amendment. I've asked a couple of people, can we say we want to see this go forward, but we want a revised design that is not what's there, how it looks, how tall it is, that kind of thing. I don't think that's possible because it's the final PUD. If it was the preliminary PUD, we could say, here are some things we'd like to see happen. In addition, here's some feedback that we'd like you to accept from the people who will have to look at this every day. And I don't see a path to do that. And that's frustrating to me because I do think we need more density closer to the core of the city to support the businesses that we have growing and starting to thrive there. But I'm not satisfied with the design as it stands. So I'm in this place where I'm supportive of the concept, but not the implementation.
Grace.
Thank you. And then would clarify too, I also don't have particular amendments at this time and was more the offer to amend the motion to keep in council rather than for approval. Just to clarify, I don't have anything specifically either. Overall, I am in support of this PUD. I would like more information, but I feel like I always want more information on anything, so I know that we also can't hold it up forever for that. And just to mention some things, so I would be interested in more information about, just to reiterate, the tree canopy, the Boneyard Creek shared path, this bonus and fee, and then also design input. So in some of my discussion thoughts here, previously the architect had come up and even sounded like had open, kind of the offer of design suggestions on the exterior, that the structure itself would be more difficult, but the exterior design, and I haven't really yet heard any constructive design input if that is an issue, so I am open to that, and I think that could be another reason for possibly keeping this in council and taking a little more time to consider it. And then people keeping that in mind. I'm also not really understanding if the main issue for some people in opposition is the fact that it's 4 stories in general, or I've heard that, it looks like socks and various things like that, but it sounds like there is an openness to some critical, constructive input, and I don't think we've got that yet, but I appreciate that that is, sounds to like it's an opening. I think that, trying to keep in mind here, and I've been hearing a lot of, sometimes Jay in my head sometimes has helped focus us in the past on focusing on the issue of this is about approving this PUD in particular, or not, and that's the issue on the table, and that there are obviously a wider context within the community that obviously exists, but that's not necessarily what this PUD on the table is about. We definitely need, I'm looking forward to the housing study, preserving the existing housing, new developments, having actually affordable housing, rent control, all those things, and that this is one piece of what's actually in front of us on the table, that we also need diverse housing options and a healthy, sustainable tax base, which can potentially be provided with what's on the table here with this PUD. I definitely hear that the comp plan doesn't exactly say this, or the zoning doesn't either, but that's, again, I think why we have variances. It is right next to downtown on the comp plan, and there are other apartments already there legally non-conforming, that it's not uncommon to have these kinds of variances or changes, especially in those neighboring places. Seems to me that the benefits to the community are that area for a shared use path, which may or may not be tied to this directly. I'm interested to learn more. The extra effort in design and challenges with future alternative developments potentially because of the floodplain location. And then I appreciate that the developer did respond to some questions, and it sounds like would be having ample notification and is open to assisting and working with the current tenants in those properties for relocating to other housing options, and would, as they legally have to, but also said that they would make a good faith effort to accept vouchers and have it as affordable as they can, which I'm also open to, if they're working, open to setting a minimum target, for example. I think that there are maybe some additional benefits, but I see that there are enough benefits to the community as is. The existing buildings there, I do think it's, unfortunate to see buildings go and be replaced, but also acknowledging that eventually, and maybe sooner rather than later, the existing apartments won't be fit for housing and will need to be replaced and will need to be something. And I do appreciate that we need to keep building so that we have older stuff in the future. So yes, in summary, I'm in support of this, but also am willing to delay because there's some more information I think we could potentially benefit from.
Point of order. Clerk, the motion on the floor right now is to approve, right?
That is correct.
So we can't delay for more discussion after we approve it, correct?
An amendment can be made at any time, even during discussion, to change it from a motion to approve to a motion to delay to a future meeting.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to delay for more discussion.
But point of order, this has been delayed once, so it will require a 2/3 vote.
All right, so a motion has been made by Mr. Evans to delay the discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mary Alice. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Oh. I have a point of information that I would like to share that I do believe is relevant to this motion to delay, if I may.
Go for it.
So the assertion was made by Councilmember Quisenberry, or the concern was expressed that there is not an opportunity for amendments to be made. And it is my understanding that even with this being a final PUD, that council does have certain, how shall I say this? They have certain options that they can ascribe. Like you can set certain conditions so long as they are within your powers enumerated in the zoning ordinance for PUD. I am not prepared to speak to the specifics of those, but we do have staff here who perhaps could answer specifics within those powers. But you do have the authority, much like the Plan Commission has the authority to ascribe conditions for approval for a preliminary and a final PUD. And this is the time at council that you could do those. But of course, like, there's questions to ask if you have them.
I was just commenting on the rules that say if you've delayed it for action once, the second time you delay it for action,
Correct.
it requires 2/3 vote. If that's
Yes.
only what we're doing, then it needs 2/3 vote.
Correct. That's not what I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to your earlier commentary. I think 2 different members have spoken since then. I just didn't have the opportunity to clarify that, and I was also confirming with staff that my understanding of the zoning ordinance was correct. And this is like a procedural thing in terms of motions, not speaking to any specific powers, just saying that you inquired if council had that authority, and in fact you do. I can't speak to the specifics of it, however.
All right, so thank you. There's a motion made by Chris, seconded by Mary Alice to delay the discussion. Seeing no further discussion, clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu? Yes. Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and that passes, and we will move that to further discussion. Do we need to determine when, will that just be the next council?
So that should be clarified. We did not state which meeting that should be moved to, and my understanding is that was just an amendment at that time. We do still have the main motion on the floor, which is going to be right to send it to a specific meeting, because that was introduced as an amendment, and there was already an amendment on there was already a motion on the floor to approve.
Yeah, I don't know what we were voting on then. I thought Chris was asking to delay it to future council meeting.
Yeah,
He was, but it was introduced.
That's not an amendment.
It was introduced as an amendment because there was already a motion on the floor.
To approve it. So there was already a motion on the floor to approve it. Chris made the amendment to continue, to delay it, to continue the discussion, which is what we just voted on. So now the question is, what date is that discussion taking place?
It's actually to.
That's a distinction without a difference.
So to further clarify, because Chris was not the one who made the original motion, he didn't have the authority to friendly amend the original motion. It is a freestanding separate motion to amend the original motion. So now the original motion reads to approve to a future meeting, which we should set a date for, as motioned by Councilmember Wilkin and seconded by Councilmember Jones, instead of just a motion to approve tonight.
Point of order, I would like the attorney's opinion on this.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I would have to look at more closely. I'm going to defer to the clerk on the nuances of the procedural rule.
So here, hold on. Here's the thing. We just made this. We just had this discussion last week of trusting the clerk. The clerk has given us the direction. I think that we should respectfully follow the direction. If for whatever reason our attorney decides that that is incorrect for whatever reason, which I'm guessing and feeling as though that won't be the case, then we can address that accordingly. As of right now, we have the votes and the approval to delay the discussion. So now the conversation it goes back to a date needing to be made, correct?
We should definitely specify a date, yes. But the original motion was for approval, and it has now been amended to be deferred. So now we have to consider, I guess, the final action of that. I know it's an abnormal circumstance, but that is the order in which the business was introduced, because it was introduced as an amendment. So we have the main motion still before us on the floor because that vote has not occurred.
Okay, so we need to vote on that initial motion. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor, can
Yes.
I ask if the motioner would be willing to take it off to rescind your motion, and then we'd get out of this whole problem? No? Okay.
So
May I say that was the original offer, is that I moved to approve, and that was what I was saying with a open for a friendly amendment to say, let's approve it or move it to city council on X date. And I'm still down for that, especially if that makes procedurally
it definitely
things
will make
better.
it procedurally cleanest. So Councilmember Wilken, you motioned we would need an agreement from the second, which was Councilmember Jones. Are you amenable to this being amended, friendly amended to defer? Cool. We're still in the same spot where we have to vote on the motion on the floor.
Okay, and let's add a date now. Next council would be the 22nd. That's also the date where we're hopefully passing the budget and things. Don't know if there's a timeline on the table for this PUD. I imagine everyone has their own timelines, but options would be June 22nd or July 6th.
Go ahead, Teresa.
My question was kind of like what Grace is hitting on. Is there a deadline that we have to meet regarding which direction this goes?
The difference of 2 weeks would be manageable. Of course, with any development, time is money, and we're asking the developer to sit in uncertainty. So it's not without cost or consideration, but I believe a difference of 2 weeks would be tolerable. Nothing has explicitly been expressed to staff to this date.
Okay, so my other question would be, is this an item that we can defer, not table, but defer until after we get the budget stuff taken care of? Because this is budget month, and we got a whole lot of other stuff too that we have to deal with. I would prefer to be able to have a clear head to deal with both of these things, to be honest. Is it possible that, and Grace, you tell me, because you and James wanted to defer too, is there a particular time that would be best where we could defer it until after we finish our budget stuff that we have to do? Okay, I just got ghosted.
You read the question to?
I'm asking Grace because of the fact that she made the whole amendment for the thing to be deferred. Am I asking the correct person?
That's the question I just asked, yes.
Yes, so
I would say July 6th, sure, it would be after budget, unless there is some reason that that's not possible.
Okay.
So just for point of information, July 6th is ordinarily a committee of the whole meeting. Are you asking for a special council meeting on July 6th? Because I can certainly accommodate that, because we are at council right now.
Yes, so next council would be the 22nd, right?
Yes, our next regularly scheduled council will be June 22nd, which is the night of the budget. Following that, the next regularly scheduled council would be July 13th. Because
okay, 29th is a fifth Monday.
Correct.
Sneaky fifth Monday. Yeah, either way, I think a special council meeting would also make sense. Special council meeting on July 6th. Question mark, sure, yes, okay.
No, that sounds, I just wanted to know, if that would work with your calendar. So
I may be remote. Hopefully we have quorum. I don't know if other people are gone, but.
All right.
Okay.
So then we have the motion on the floor for the deferred conversation of this to be moved to a special city council meeting July 6th. Motion made by, I don't remember who it was made by.
Councilmember
Grace,
Wilkin,
seconded by
seconded by
Jones.
Jones.
All right, no further discussion. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that passes. We will talk about this again on July 6th. Thank you. All right, we will now move to Committee of the Whole. Councilmember Hersey, the floor is yours.
Okay. All righty then. Bringing to, oops, let me find my agenda. For the consent agenda.
I apologize,
Hold on one second.
Councilmember Hersey.
I'll
If
wait.
conversations can please be continued in the lobby of City Council, we are still going to proceed with the remainder of the agenda items on this meeting, and in order to maintain a clear meeting record, I need the audio in chambers to be silent except for the council, please. Thank you.
All right, Sharice.
Okay, coming from Committee of the Whole on our consent agenda, item H1A, resolution number 2026-06-022R, resolution approving an increase in the number of liquor licenses in the Class R and R&T2 designation for Good Judy's Espresso and Bagel Bar, LLC, DBA, DBA, Good Judy's Espresso and Bagel Bar, 2740 Vital Road, Suite D, for approval.
Second.
All right, motion made by Sharice, seconded by Mary Alice. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
No.
Councilmember Wilkin.
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that passes.
Okay, our regular agenda resolution number 2026-06-021R, resolution approving the capital improvement plan, fiscal years 2027 through 2031.
Second.
All right, motion
Can I
made
get
by
a second?
Sharice, seconded by Quisenberry. Any discussion? Grace.
Thank you. Two main things here for me would be equity and quality of life and the sanitary sewer. I don't know if we have a preference which one first. Do you have a preference, Mayor? No? Okay. Sanitary sewer fund, yeah, it has come to our attention, and I appreciate looking at some of the details. Same kind of general idea with stormwater utility fund also, that we're running ourselves into a long-term deficit. And curious on more information about that in general. Why we're taking the vast majority of that tax money into the general fund, what it's used for, if it's for that purpose, and then also things like in this budget, why we're taking $400,000 from the general fund to the sewer fund, but then we're also taking $1.3 million from the sewer fund to the general fund. So just lots of questions on all those numbers.
Yeah, and we
Point of
did for.
information, could you clarify which sewer fund? Were those both the same?
204 is sanitary sewer fund. It's on page 84 of 95 of the capital improvement draft that's available online. And then same kind of idea with Fund 201, Stormwater Utility Fund.
Thank you.
And we did forward that information on to engineering. Did you want to touch on anything now?
The interfund
All right,
transfers are nothing new, but it's something that Justin and I, in our roles here, have been looking at very closely in regards to the long-term sustainability of the fund balance. So we've been working with our finance director in getting a better understanding and accounting for how those relate to the other services within the general fund that support the capital costs. So for more clarity, I'd have to defer to Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that. So there is, in the financial policies, we have a policy of assessing these funds that charge fees for support services in the general fund. So things like, finance and city administrator and HR and city clerk that support all the functions of the government take a piece of that. There's also a significant piece in those two particular funds that supports the sewer operations budget in Public Works, which makes these two kind of different than admin charges for other funds. I think the other thing we mentioned when we made the budget presentation was just that the sanitary sewer fund is the one fund that doesn't have an asset management plan completed, and that asset management plan is probably going to tell us, even after we, take a closer look again at the interfund charges, is almost certainly going to tell us that we need to increase those fees to pay for the improvements that are needed.
But can we, is it possible to, and understand that this capital improvement plan has an interesting kind of relationship with the budget, but could we try to kind of itemize that, so we can better understand what does 1.3 million from the sanitary sewer fund going into the general fund do, and how is it spent when our entire fee coming in is 1.49 million? So how are we transferring out the majority of that tax money to the general fund, and if then on what is it being spent for sanitary sewer stuff in the city?
Yeah, I can give you some more information about that, but I can't do it off the top of my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you could follow up on that, and understanding that the CIP may need to have to go through, but I think can be amended, which also kind of related to the equals thing. But yeah, I'd like some more information, and then kind of longer term plan about running $1.78 million deficit in that fund by 2031. And it sounds like, Elizabeth, you're saying that you expect from the asset management plan we'll have to increase that fee. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I think partly what you're seeing there is that the expenses are being projected out, but there's no speculation, there's no estimate for future fee increases that might occur that would kind of balance out the additional expenditures. That's just not there. There was a desire to not speculate about revenues that hadn't yet been approved.
Yes, which makes sense. But again, if we could just have some more information that maybe let the public know that we're not only spending $200,000 to $300,000 of the entire tax pool on the thing that people are being charged for.
James?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify what I think I heard, which was that transfer of, for example, the 1.3 million into the general fund is going there for two things. One part is for the administrative overhead of the city operating that fund and that tax. And the other part is for operations in support of that function that Public Works does.
Correct.
We have to pay the Public Works cost out of the general fund, and we can't do it directly out of the.
Correct. We don't do it directly out of the sanitary fund or the stormwater fund, so both of those funds pick up the burden of that operating expense.
So the clarity that would be useful is how much of that 1.3 million is the overhead part, and how much of it is being spent on actual work that needs to be done, which is what we collected the money for, right? I think that would help people understand that a little bit better. And I do want to add, my understanding is we've been talking about long-term changes to the stormwater tax. We've had presentations on that, and we implemented a small change, but we knew it wasn't going to be enough for the long term. So I assume somebody's going to be coming back at some point to tell us what the next change like that needs to look like.
Yeah, so the stormwater utility fee was adopted in 2012 with incremental increases scheduled for 5 years. And then when that ended, there was we maintained a flat rate until a couple years ago when the stormwater asset management plan was completed and identified the need for additional funding into the future. And I mean, like everything, we need to increase our rates on an annual basis because everything gets more expensive on an annual basis. So that's what has been done with the stormwater utility fee. As part of that we did look at what those actual operating costs were for stormwater related activities. So that fund's in a much better position now, and we don't show that deficit like we do in the sanitary sewer fund, because we've been able to study those actual costs and determine what the cost of actually providing those services has been. The sanitary sewer fee was established in 1980, and that is actually a fee that does increase on an annual basis through the schedule of fees. So every year that's part of that schedule that's voted on and increased to account for kind of the inflationary additional costs of operating and doing that work. So the sanitary sewer program really hasn't changed drastically for quite some time. We've had a pretty consistent sewer repairs and sewer lining program through that fund that we've operated through. One of the significant changes that impacted this was a 2022 budget policy that increased the general fund transfer, and that kind of put us on a downward trajectory that we're looking at now with this year. So I do want to clarify that the sanitary sewer asset management plan isn't necessarily going to, we shouldn't count on that to address this budget deficit. We need to kind of treat the two things separately. There's the budget deficit and the service that we can provide with the funds we've been bringing in on an annual basis. And then the sanitary sewer asset management plan is how we'll identify what else we need to do or we could do, and then what the associated additional costs would be for that.
Grace?
Yeah, thank you for clarification and some follow-up on kind of itemizing that. And then other topic was the equity and quality of life that we had talked about last week. I think I was too sad to articulate many questions about like how do we get it in there, but had some conversations offline with the mayor quite briefly about can we get that back, how can we get that back, and didn't know if you or Elizabeth had things to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll let Elizabeth kind of piggyback off of what I communicated with earlier, but just essentially how we can revisit that conversation.
Sure. I mean, the issue is that there's very little flexibility in the general fund budget, and that program was funded by transfers from the general fund. So currently, other than the additional $200,000 that we weren't expecting to get from the state because we thought they were going to take our share of our income tax, which I would suggest we hold back for implementing alternative response task force recommendations because we know those are coming, and we only have $300,000 set aside. Beyond that, we have $63,000 in one-time money that could be allocated somewhere else, which I don't think is really enough to do anything significant on equity and quality of life. So I would have to ask you, what would you like to cut from the budget to put more money into equity and quality of life? That would be the question. It's been funded kind of intermittently. Generally, we'll fund it, and that'll carry us for a couple of years. The other option is wait until the year is closed, right? Till the audit's done and the year is closed. We invariably find that people overestimated what they were going to spend in the current fiscal year, and there's a little bit of extra money carried over. And so at that point in time, you could choose to amend the budget. My guess, and I'm just guessing here, is you could pick up $1 million at that point, do a budget amendment, and move that into the capital improvement fund for an additional equity and quality of life project. You would have to, we'd have to ask Justin about timing. Most likely, most of that, I would think in the first year, all that might happen is a little design or planning work, not any actual construction. But
Grace?
Yeah, thank you for the information. And I was wondering about, I don't quite understand how that works. Like this year that's just closing, we ended up with about 3.5 million in those vacancies that were left over. And then does that just kind of disappear when we get to the next budget? And if so, how do we ever access that kind of money? Seems like you're suggesting.
I mean, I think you have accessed it in past years. We've amended the budget to spend those funds. But yes, when we start the new budget process, right, that's all, unless it's been allocated, we assume it's going to carry forward and get allocated in the next budget. So, I mean, you would have to see where that went. You have to look at all the recommendations that are included in the budget that you're reviewing now. So it's things like, there's a substantial amount of these interfund transfers to other funds where we know there are issues we need to address, things like that. If not for that issue, we could put $1 million in equity and quality of life.
And then I was also wondering about, we've set aside money for CDBG and other funds that may be cut at a federal level that I think so far we fortunately have not suffered. So at what point do we access those funds and say we set this aside for 5 years? We didn't use year one. Can year one money that was set aside essentially for that go into equity and quality of life projects or other things that the city needs? At what point do we stop holding on to this reserve indefinitely? So I don't have the answers, but I just want to throw it out, and I think we can find a thing, but I would really like to see equity and quality of life stuff continue. I see a little bit of stuff for sidewalks in here, but not very much, and I think that especially focusing there, this was a big thing that was talked about. I would suggest for, Ward 6 areas that was talked about that listening session. I imagine there are places all over town that would be able to continue to benefit from these kinds of things, and I would really hate to see that die, and so I would love for us to see how we could find some money to do that.
Thank you, Chris. Chris?
I just want to understand this, Elizabeth. So at the end of budget amendment number 9, just about a month ago, we had $3.5 million left in the general fund, extra, beyond the 25% policy. We had $3.5 million, and now you're telling me that's gone because of a new budget cycle. Like, have we spent that 3.5 or what?
So I'm not saying it's gone, but as you know, we're always refining our estimates. So at that point, we were basing that on the estimates that we had for FY26, and now we're projecting further out. We're looking through all of FY27. But yeah, certainly when we go through the budget process, we're looking at how much is going to be left at the end of the year and carry through to next year, and sure, that gets allocated in the next budget. Or not, but mostly allocated this year.
An increase of spending in various ways that eats up that 3.5 million.
Well, the three, if I don't remember exactly what number you're referring to, I think you're talking about like extra fund balance that would have been one-time money. So yeah, it would have been allocated to one-time expenditures.
Grace?
And sorry, if we could also clarify here, because I think I recall last week that there is some kind of time pressure for passing the capital improvement plan. But it seems like things are always amendable, but just wanted to clarify that process too. If we pass the CIP tonight and then maybe we want to change something about the sanitary sewer fund or about equals, kind of what is the mechanism for that?
So I can take a shot at that. So the first year of the capital improvement plan essentially is part of the budget. So generally what's happened in the past is if we want to make a change, we do it as a budget amendment through that process.
You do it as a budget amendment for the current year, like FY27 allocated here. But future years would just be in the next CIP, I imagine.
Correct, right? Because you'll go through this whole process again next year. I mean, I suppose we could ask Public Works if they'd want to create a whole new plan mid-year, but generally that's kind of a once a year sort of thing.
Thank you.
Mary Alice.
Yeah, so two things. The first one is the jail in here at all? I didn't see it. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss it. Yeah, I'm in Central.
Bear with us 1 second.
point of
There
information.
appears to be
owners-
a FY '28 allocation in the 344 Central TIF plan.
Okay, so it's not this fiscal year. It's,
Correct.
and then for the, sorry, it's late. When it gets after 10 o'clock, then yeah. The Civic Center, that's what I'm looking for. So right now, the allocated is 700,000 for fiscal year '27, and then 300,000, sorry, 3 million to demolish it? Is that what's in here?
I believe that the 700,000 is for the Civic Center itself. The 300,000.
3 million, it's
the
3 million.
$3 million, excuse me, in FY '28. I believe that was a prior earmark for potential jail site work from a previous administration.
Okay, so just to be clear, I guess one question I have is projected fiscal year 2026, approximately 700,000. That was for the adult education building, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so it costs us around 700,000 to demolish and clear that site?
I don't have the final number in my head, but that was what that allocation was for, yes.
So then if we are allocating 700,000 this year in TIF, what does that cover?
That represents the demolition of this year. That allocation was for what was for the Race and Griggs. FY '27, the allocation is for the demolition of the Civic Center, and then there was a future allocation for the jail in FY '28.
So I guess my question is, if we pass the SIP right now, then we are also passing that we are demolishing the Civic Center, is that correct? Or is that?
That just means that there would be a set aside of those funds should the demolition move forward.
And what is the process for the demolition to move forward? Does that come back to City Council?
That is, we can get back to you on that process. We've been holding, I mean, this is not new. We hold money in the capital improvement plan for demolitions. It's just if the demolition should move forward. So like we were holding on to funds for the adult education building for a while, and then it went down this year, this past fiscal year. So I think it's more of an accounting, and my understanding is that it's accounting, making sure the funds are there should we move forward. We can clarify process on demolition.
I guess, I mean, I think it deserves a conversation in terms of the Civic Center. So I would hate for us to pass the SIP with this allocation of 700,000 for demolition and not have further conversation at City Council for demolition of either the jail or the Civic Center. So that would be my concern with including the 700,000 here. I'm not opposed to having something that says that those demolitions of those city-owned buildings would come to City Council, if there's some way to do that.
Chris?
Well, the jail's not a city-owned property, right?
No.
Okay, and are we taking on that responsibility to demo the jail?
No,
I didn't think
there are, to my understanding, I'm not aware of any plans to do such.
Right.
This was just an allocation, should that decision be made from a prior administration. So similar with the allocation for the demolition, it doesn't mandate that we do. Should the decision be made through whatever process is determined, in the absence of the funding, should the process determine that that is the ultimate resolution decided upon by this council to do such, we would need the funding. In absence of that funding, we wouldn't be able to move forward.
Okay, but anytime we're doing these allocations, it's just an allocation, right? It's not, because Mary Alice's concern is valid. If I say yes to 700,000 of doing the Civic Center, I didn't just say, go knock the Civic Center.
That's absolutely correct. We're still required to follow due process.
And what is factual is that we're going to have to deal with the landmark issue of the Civic Center first, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I guess to add on that, council is approving staff to enact the capital improvement plan as laid out. In FY27, that's included in the budget. So anything, the rest of our projects, council is giving staff the approval to implement the capital improvement plan. That means that we don't need to come back with every project for council approval. At this point, that only approves FY27 because we're not budgeting for FY28. We're planning for FY28 and beyond, but we're budgeting for FY27 right now. So anything in FY27 that doesn't otherwise require, so for the Civic Center, that there are additional steps that need to take place before that demolition would happen. But for other projects, we wouldn't otherwise bring those back for approval from council. So it is kind of a blanket approval of anything in the FY27 budget year. And then additional steps on top of that would be required for certain projects.
You have another question, Mary Ellis?
Yeah, thank you. I guess, so I understand that there's a landmark that we'll have to deal with as well, but I kind of want to circle back for just a moment. Let's just pretend for the moment that a landmark status we don't have to deal with that. If we approve the fiscal year 27 SIP and also the fiscal year 27 budget, that would mean essentially that the city would have permission to use $700,000 to demolish any city property within the central TIF. Is that right?
Can I add a point of information? It does say specifically central TIF demolition for the Civic Center.
Yeah,
because it's in that budget.
Yeah, it's fair to expect that we would be specific about things like that. So because we list the Civic Center as a project, and I don't know that it is timeline, under timeline on page 9 of the facilities section, section 4, it says Urbana Civic Center FY27. So we are specific about that, and that's the intent.
So the intent is for the timeline is Urbana Civic Center here, and fiscal year 27 is on that page 62 if anybody's looking online. So I guess at the end of the day, it sounds to me like putting aside the landmark status, that if we approve it as is right now, the Civic Center, there is money in the budget that could then demolish the Civic Center, and there wouldn't be any further information that would come or any vote from the city council. That's how I read that.
Well, that's what we would like to clarify, because if it's owned by the city of Urbana, the corporate authorities of the city of Urbana, you all are included in the corporate authority. I don't remember what we did with the Race and Griggs property because I wasn't here yet. And that was the Adult Education Center, but that was also money set aside in the central TIF budget, specifically with, a note that it was tied to that parcel. Yeah, so I was sort of treating it as the same in my understanding, my working understanding.
Unless I've missed something, we'll never demolish or do anything like that without first presenting it and bringing it to council. Like, that's just a thing.
Well, I would just say that there was the case that the adult center came down and it was $998,000, Vince, without our approval. It was set aside. The money was set aside. It was agreed upon at some point, some way. But it suddenly got done, like Justin was saying, that once the money's set aside, we don't come back every 5 minutes to get approval for the next thing. So there is the precedent that oftentimes, when the money's been budgeted, they then schedule what they're going to do when they want to do it. So.
No, and I get that, but I also think that we've been pretty forthcoming with information and transparency. So again, we're not going to demolish the city without first bringing it to you all. Because
Right. And there's a definite difference between the adult education center and the civic center.
Sure.
I understand that.
Yeah. All right. No further discussion. Motion made by Sharice, seconded by Quisenberry. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
You're waiting on me. Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. That passes. Sharice.
Regular agenda B, ordinance number 2026-06-114, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a lease, 1717 Fowler Road, Suite 16, PD.
All right, motion made by Sharice. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Jones. Discussion. All right, seeing none. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
No.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
No.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Thank you.
That passes. Thank you. All right, that was it. All right, we will now hear reports of special committees. Seeing none, we will now hear reports of officers. First, on the agenda.
Mayor Deshaun, I'm so
Yep,
sorry.
you're fine.
For reports of special committees, we just want to make sure that the council is aware for Ward 5, we have received 6 applications. The interview process has started this week. With those 6 applications, we did have one individual remove themselves from the process early before their interview. As we wrap up the 5 remaining interviews, we'll be sure to then bring those finalists back for the next the next meeting, which will be a COW meeting. So similar to what took place for Ward 4, then we'll bring them for introductions, questions that were provided in the previous process, unless you all have any updated questions that you would like to be addressed. Please share those with Mayor Williams, and then from there we will have a session to be able to deliberate those applicants so that we can move forward as we are approaching the 60-day timeline from the resignation that was given by former council member Chandra Bishop.
James and then Chris.
Yeah, point of information, the 60 days is just for the mayor to make his appointment, then we have 30 days to act on it, right?
Yes.
The newspaper said 8 candidates.
There were 8 applications total received.
Yes. We received some that were not actually in the ward, so that's 1, and then I'm missing another. Or do we have 5? We have 5 interviews set for Friday. Excuse me, so 4 for Friday. We had 2 today. 1 individual pulled out. 1 did not live in the ward. Thanks for clarification on that.
All right. Now, we will have reports of officers. First report is the Urbana Free Library budget.
I don't know if I should read a bedtime story or if I should have you all stand up.
You have access to the
Only
books.
if you want us to go to sleep.
Well,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Sharice, did you have something?
yeah, I just wanted to say this is Talia's first presentation to us since she's become the executive director at the library, and I want to welcome her and wish her good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Library Board of Trustees, I am here to present the draft fiscal year 27 draft budget. And my name is Talia Abdullah, as Sharice said, and I'm the executive director for the Urbana Free Library. So I only have 3 slides. I just want to go through quickly and talk about our revenue, our expenses, and some of the items that we are prioritizing for fiscal year 27. And the number at the bottom of the screen, the 5,820,397 has changed, and so I want to update that. As you can see from the screen, property taxes are where the library receives the majority of our revenue, and property taxes account for 86% of the revenue, and then the other 14% is from a variety of sources, including the PPRT, a per capita grant that the library receives from the state, and we're anticipating a few $1,000s more just because with there was a special census in which the population for Urbana increased, and so we're expecting a bit more for the per capita grant. And then, so other revenue includes grants from the foundation and, of course, from the city of Urbana, which we greatly appreciate. There were 2 above the baseline requests sent and submitted to the city. One was for $70,000 to assist with roof repairs. Our roof has seen better days. It is over 20 years old, and it's been patched, and it can no longer be patched. And so we need to replace part of the roof. We have $260,000, and $70,000 from the city would help us be able to go ahead and do this work. And then, so just something to know about the roof. Anytime it rains or there's a heavy snowfall, there's buckets next to staff desk. We are also having to cover some of our material in the Champaign County Historical Society our historical archives, so that it does not get damaged because of the leaking roof. And then the second item that we submitted for support from the city is for subsidizing dependent care. Currently, library staff pay about 4 times as much for health insurance than city staff, and so we're asking for support with that. Just not being able to, so one of the reasons that I submitted a request for subsidizing dependent care is in an effort to retain and recruit some of our staff members, especially those who are traditionally underrepresented in libraries. And this could be people from historically marginalized populations, also people who identify as male. If you walk into the library at any point, you see a certain demographic of people who tend to work in libraries. And so the dependent healthcare has been a barrier for people who are interested in working at the library and staying. And so to update this number from 5,820,397, that number is 5,820,955. We did receive a grant of just over $500 that is now included in this revenue. And then moving on to expenses, one thing that I didn't share is that this budget it takes into consideration the mission of the library, the vision, the strategic plan, and our Illinois Public Library standards. The strategic plan is due for an update. It expires at the end of this year, and so I did not include the strategic plan for fiscal year 27 in a way that I would have if the strategic plan was not kind of ending its term. So as far as expenses, you can see that the majority of our expenses go to salaries and benefits. So salaries and benefits is almost 74% of the library budget. And our Illinois Public Library standards, so suggests it guides libraries to allocate up to 70% of the operating budget for salaries and benefit, and this includes FICA, pension, and health benefits. I also just made a note that all library staff will receive a cost of living increase of 3.25%, and then qualified staff, we have a wage scale in the library, and staff move up the scale depending on their years of service. Also included, so two of the things that you'll see when you walk in the library, you'll see the people who are working there, who are making sure that you're receiving the best possible service. And then the other thing that is most visible is the collection. So the materials that people rely on the library for to check out, to have available. And the recommendation from the Illinois Public Library Standards is to have 8 to 12% of our operating budget is spent on materials, and we're just over 8% for that, so we are meeting that standard. And then just again, thinking about where our time and resources are going in fiscal year 27. So the partial roof replacement is number one. There's been a lot of deferred maintenance that we are now making sure that we prioritize because it has been deferred. It's at a point where we have to take care of it. We can't put it off any longer, and things are more expensive, so we just want to make sure that we're getting some of our facility needs taken care of. The strategic plan, that was from 2023 to 2026, and so working with consultants to see what it looks like, the next iteration for our strategic plan, hopefully will be 27 through 30. As a lifelong learning institution, which the library is, we are always looking at continuing education and ensuring that staff are meeting the needs of the community. We cannot stay static or stagnant. We have to upgrade our skills, upgrade our information, upgrade the services and the resources that the library offers that the community needs. And then we also have an opportunity for youth engagement and development. We do a great job, the library does a great job of serving, I think, children ages like birth to 5 up to maybe age 7. We have some opportunities with children ages 8 to 12, our teens, and our young adults. And so those will be priority areas and ages for our fiscal year 27. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Thank you, Talia.
You're welcome.
Any questions? All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Happy a little over 1 year. Are we a year?
Not quite.
Not
It'll
quite.
be a year in a few weeks.
All right, time flies when you're having fun. Thank you. All right, next we have Philo Road Initiative, and the floor is yours, Olivia. Well, yours/mine.
Very briefly, if we can, it is now 10:20 p.m. by my watch, and we have a mandatory adjournment of 10:30 unless otherwise amended.
All right.
I move.
Thank you.
Can I make a motion? Move for the meeting to go till 10:50?
Second.
Moved by Sharice, seconded by Mary Alice. Do we need a vote?
Yes.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that passes. Olivia, the floor is yours.
All right, good evening, everybody. This is my first budget season, and I'm honored to be making my first budget presentation in conjunction with the mayor himself. Hopefully, we can keep this short and sweet, and I'm happy to follow up with any additional information. It doesn't have to happen tonight. Can provide emails or come back to present. So as you see in the proposed FY27 budget, the mayor is placing continued emphasis on the Philo Road area through the Philo Road Ahead initiative. And the proposed budget includes allocations of $100,000 for a Philo Road revitalization study, $50,000 for development incentives in the area, and then $20,000 for related programs and events. And these are all one-time, not recurring funds that would be placed in the FY27 budget. So in this brief presentation, we'll touch on each of these recommended funds. And the $20,000 is being proposed for Philo Road programs and events. And it's at this point which I'll turn it over to the mayor to discuss that initiative.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially to get straight to the point, a repeat of what we did last year in regards to the initial kickoff around the Philo Road Ahead. We got great community feedback from that, you know, and what we're wanting to do is repeat that, but elevate it, you know, even more. So, you know, just essentially make this more of a larger festival to continue to bring the attention and focus on that corridor in particular, to let the folks of the community know and feel appreciated, seen as we continue to move forward with, you know, new development and things that are going to be taking place in that area. So that was it.
Okay, great. We also, there's also a recommendation for $100,000 for the Philo Road revitalization study. And I'd like to describe my vision, or the city's vision, for the use of those funds. So as you all know, the Philo Road area and Philo Road corridor is outside of a TIF area. There's no TIF mapped within that area. And so there's actually a process to establish a TIF, and a local government must find that the development or redevelopment of the area would not occur but for the creation and use of a TIF. And then Illinois law specifies a number of requirements that must be satisfied for an area to qualify as a TIF district. So beginning that, determining if it meets those statutory requirements by state law, you'd have to begin with identifying the district and the physical and economic deficiencies that need to be cured. And specifically, state law requires that the proposed area must meet one or more of the three conditions of blighted conditions, a conservation condition, and an industrial park conservation condition. I'm not really able at this stage to speak in detail to those three different conditions, but I'm happy to provide further information after this. But basically, the formal study would actually document the economic deficiencies and then tie it back to one of those three conditions in order to qualify for a TIF. And then once that demonstrated need is documented, then, and to do that, you would need surveys, field assessments, data collection, identification of conditions that, you know, that exist economically. So then after that step is done, you'd actually need a redevelopment plan. And the redevelopment plan is quite comprehensive. It would include goals and intended improvements, eligible project costs that would be eligible for use by the TIF, and then a multi-year budget for TIF expenditures. And it's a very involved process. It can take several months to years to complete this economic analysis and make sure that all requirements are, you know, in compliance with state. And then, you know, and then there would be an approval process through a joint review board. But I don't want to get too in the weeds on the actual process of a TIF creation. The idea is that the study would kick off that process, and as a first step, we would like to hire a consultant to produce a TIF eligibility study and redevelopment plan. I did do some research on this. The cost is currently sort of undefined right now, as it's dependent on the geographic size and area and complexity of the actual proposal. And in my best estimate, it looks like the costs would range from $75,000 to $125,000 to hire a consultant to complete a full eligibility study and plan. And of course, I will just mention, of course, that these consultants are usually comprised of legal counselors, economic development consultants, and registered municipal advisors. So there is a certain professional and technical expertise that's required to produce these reports. So, yep, this is the proposal as it currently stands for the use of that revitalization study. Happy to take questions later.
I do want
yeah.
to just say too, while you made the comment about 75 to 125,000, in the case that it is 75, understand that extra funding that we have remaining will go directly back into the community in that sense.
Yeah.
My quick question, Mayor, would be the consultant, the 75 to 125, it's within that 170, the big 170, right?
That's right. So the total that we've allocated for this study is 100,000. So I think if we would need, I mean, if it's more than that, we'd have to come for a budget amendment, but I would probably, we would be bidding it out and look for competitive proposals. So I'd hope that it would fall within this range and hopefully be a little bit less so that there could be some additional funds for implementation or additional community engagement, something like that.
We've been talking about studying this area and potentially creating a TIF district, but I think in addition to all the legwork that has to be done and the preparation and so forth, the other piece is, are the other taxing bodies, are they open to this? I'm wondering if you've had conversations with the other taxing bodies, so that, especially with the school district, before we go down this whole road.
Yeah, actually, thank you for that question. So I think early on in my tenure, as you'll remember, we had to decommission the TIF 4. And so through that process, which was just for other people's edification, it's just the TIF was at the end of its lifetime. We had the opportunity to potentially extend, but it would have required like a Hail Mary, and there was really short timelines. So in all of that conversation, I got to meet the school district representatives, Dr. Ivory Tatum and others, and have specifically conversations about TIFs. And through that process, there was a real sense of partnership and wanting to be a partner in economic development with the city of Urbana. And there was specific discussion at a high level of support for a TIF in Philo area. I don't want to speak for the school district, of course, but that was definitely my impression from those initial meetings.
Any further? I'm sorry, Grace, I thought you had your hand up, but you were scratching your palm. All right.
And then last but certainly not least, we've requested $50,000 for Philo Road development incentives. So as this area is currently not in a TIF, there are no real funds to tap into as we would in Central TIF for things like signage grants or building stabilization or any kind of other sort of off-the-shelf redevelopment or development program that might be conceptualized. And so this $50,000 would be set aside to essentially allow for us to create a targeted, flexible economic development incentive that would be tailor-made for that specific area. The initial thought that came to mind would be that it would operate similar, or not initial thought, but the thought that's currently in development is that it would be a 50-50 match structure in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. So the city would put in maybe $15,000 and then the property owner would match that with their own $15,000. And that would be for programs that enhance the public safety, property appearance, business retention, or beautification of the properties in the Philo Road corridor, which often face disinvestment, and that's due to sort of the larger macroeconomic factors that are at play there. So this would require participation by the property owner, but we could, I could see incentivizing things like, landscaping improvements, the outdoor security or LED lighting improvements, things that would help with the public safety and beautification of properties in Philo Road. Without setting specific funds aside, we're actually unable to meet the requests of folks who come to us asking for support in these areas, and we have received quite a few of those over the past year. We do have the $15,000 for signage grants, so that would be preserved in the fiscal year 27 budget. But beyond that, there's nothing really set aside for these kinds of initiatives. So that's the proposal as it stands, although of course nothing is finalized or ready for review, but that's the direction we'd like to take it. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Olivia. Any questions? Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, Grace.
What's going to be the process for deciding those grants?
Yeah, so we would bring this forward. The program would be designed, and then it would be, the program itself would need to be approved by council, and then that council authority would allow for the staff to operate that program administratively. Okay, and just being mindful of time, we're going to launch right into the next one. I'm joined this evening by Chris Coulter. So this is Chris's first council meeting, and it's definitely a long one. I know that's budget season for all of us, but I'll let him introduce himself.
Good evening. I'm Chris Coulter. I'm the new grants manager for Community Development Services. Recently worked in Madison County, Illinois as their CDBG and home manager.
So Chris is here tonight to answer any questions about CDBG and home, but also just to introduce himself so y'all can get to know him. Okay, so in the fiscal year 27 budget, we do have several recommendations for social services. So there's the Community Services Grant, which you're all familiar with from the past 2 fiscal years. We've had a Community Services Grant. I think before that it was called the Youth Services Grant, and it was a little bit different, but had a similar social service approach or service delivery approach. So as with years prior, the baseline funding for community service grants would come in at $295,000, and that would be a recurring annual fee, so that would show up in future budgets as well. And then the mayor has requested a few special one-time set-asides, so these are just one-time set-asides for fiscal year 27 specifically. The first being $100,000 for youth service grants, and the second being $100,000 for assistance to unhoused neighbors. So I'll just go into a little bit more detail about those 2 specific one-time set-asides. So the youth service grants would likely be funding for grants to public and not-for-profit agencies to provide community-based services for children and youth from low-income families. Youth is being defined as early childhood, so kindergarten or pre-K through 22 years of age. And in the past, key service areas have included health and wellness, opportunities for workforce development, and violence prevention, so like mentoring or educational programs, things of that nature. And then for the $100,000 to assist in assistance to unhoused neighbors, at this time, this is not being narrowly defined, but it could cover a range of services, supports, and interventions to people experiencing homelessness with the goal of meeting immediate needs, improving stability, and connecting those individuals to housing and long-term resources. Happy to answer any questions, or I'll just keep moving.
Mary Alice.
This might not be a question for you, Olivia, but perhaps for the mayor and Darius. Are we going to continue, are we going to have like one whole granting cycle that covers all of these things? And then, or are these going to be separate things? Does that make sense?
There may be opportunity for us to pivot in that sense, as we've seen the use of the domestic violence and the immigrant service funding, where it may be a need for some of these to be sent out via a request for proposal, so that we are able to work with the applicants and get their interests and be able to go back and forth. When we do it through our community grants proposal now, it is a competitive application, and what we've realized is we may have missed the mark in some opportunities because we have to stick to those that protocol in the competitive process, where it's not a back and forth. It's we accept your application as is. In this case, we don't want to continue that where we can miss the opportunity to support a target audience in this case. So at this point, it hasn't been decided, but we are looking into other opportunities. for those fundings to be distributed.
Okay. All right. I guess the only thing I would say is I did like the fact that we had different groups of people looking at those applications. So some way that you can have multiple, people have input on it, I would encourage that.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next slide. This one's a little bit technical, but basically, so there are federal grants that we administer are CDBG and home, and there are certain administrative set-asides for those grants. So the HUD actually contemplates the staff time needed to actually administer CDBG or administer home. So the administrative allocation for CDBG is 20%, which comes out to about $73,000 this year. And then the administrative allocation for home is about 10%, which is about $64,000 a year. So that covers staff time associated with administering those federal funds. And staff actually track the hours that they work on whether it's on a CDBG project or a home project or other projects. So then that begs the question, where do we fund staff time for other projects? And so the practice in the budget has been to sort of allocate that staff time back to the Community Development Special Fund, which is a line in the budget. And there are multiple special revenue funds. So this Community Development Special Fund is just one of many special revenue funds. I think the total special revenue funds represent about 18% of the city's budget. And so, so in the case of the Grants Management Division, the Special Revenue Fund has been calculated to cover the remainder of services not covered by the Federal Grant Administration budget, and that includes a portion of staff salaries for the manager, specialist, coordinator, code enforcement employees who provide support for grant projects, and then it also includes very small portion of it includes things like office supplies and dues and memberships and things like that as well. So it's basically just a portion of the general fund that would be used for staff salaries and just dedicated in a special restricted fund for this specific purpose. And this is practice that we've been doing for many years. And as a result, the special fund occasionally needs to be essentially be topped up to ensure that there's a positive balance throughout the duration of the fiscal year. And because the division has been so understaffed and there's been essentially the lack of staff has meant that the funding has not been depleted at the same rate as it otherwise would have been. So now we're just taking, now that we're staffing up and I'm here to help balance budgets and think about the community development department in a more comprehensive and holistic way, we are making a request for that one-time transfer of $100,000 into the special fund so that we can ensure that we have funds in place for staff moving forward into this coming fiscal year and probably future fiscal years. I don't anticipate that we would need to do this again next year, for example. So this is an accounting exercise. I'm happy to answer questions as best I can, and I also ask that Dawn and Elizabeth support if needed.
Any questions? All right.
Okay, and then last, but okay, well, actually two more, this slide and then one more, and then I'm done, I promise. So you'll notice that there's a carry forward of funds from the fiscal year 26 budget into the fiscal year 27 budget. So none of this is new. This is truly just being carried over because we're not going to complete all of the grant agreements in time for the June 30th deadline. We will, however, have all of those funds allocated likely by the end of July. So this is carrying forward the budgeted funds from fiscal year 26 into fiscal year 27 for the community services grants, and then also the special $200,000 set aside to support domestic violence victims, and the special $100,000 set aside to address gaps in services for immigrants. So this is just a note on accounting. Are there any questions about this?
All right, go for it.
Okay. All right, last slide. So Elizabeth touched on this earlier, and I think this is a much larger conversation, so I'll just address it here because it was mentioned in the budget and it's part of the grants management division. But the city, as proposed in the fiscal year 27 budget, will continue to maintain the $4.6 million reserve related to potential reductions in federal programs. And so that's that special reserve in case CDBG and home funds are cut, and it also covers staff positions to support those programs. So that $3.1 million would be maintained to protect those existing programs and staffing. So that's just that you'll see that again in the budget. That's not anything new. It's just being maintained as it had been originally introduced. And that concludes my presentation this evening.
All right, thank you, you all. Chris.
Just thank you, Olivia. One quick question. And maybe Mayor, you might be able to help here. I just remember a couple months ago, big announcement of the community services grant. The number was around 600,000 at that time. And I'm just wondering where that number fits into all these other numbers. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went back one slide. So you'll see that the allocation for community service grants in the fiscal year 26 budget was 325,000. And then actually council members, I believe yourself and Councilmember Wilkin made amendments to have those set asides for the 200,000 to support domestic violence victims and the 100,000 to address the gaps in immigrant services. So those were additional sort of social service funds that were set aside in the budget. There was no specific directive on how those funds should be allocated to the public, and so myself and our former grants manager Nick Olson were trying to figure out the best delivery of those funds to the public in a timely fashion that would be suitable to our extremely limited staff at the time. He was operating as a grants manager of one at the time, and so we rolled those in. We rolled the 200,000 and the 100,000 into the community service grants program, but we specifically in the application specified that the $200,000 of that fund had to be used for domestic violence victims and $100,000 had to be used for addressing gaps in service for immigrants. So it was captured the intent of the delivery of those special funds, but it was rolled into that CSG program.
And then one quick last question. So I'm sure this is in the works, and I hate giving you something else to do, but there's going to be, at some point, I'm sure, a list of where we spent all the money, right? I mean,
yes, actually. So these funds are being carried forward, and Chris Coulter will bring we're actually in active conversation with the subrecipients now, and Chris plans to bring those grant agreements, correct me if I'm wrong, forward, I believe on the June, or...
We were going to do it on the July 6th meeting, so I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I'm new. Yeah. I'll figure it out.
We're bringing them in July, but we just want to make sure that we have the finalized budgets from all of the subrecipients who are conditionally awarded, basically.
Grace?
If I could clarify with that too, I think what Mary Alice was asking that in this one, because I was on the search committee, thank you for letting me be at the selection committee for this. And years past, I think that has been helpful to have a commission person or two and a council person or two to kind of go through them with staff, just have more people to think about it and go through spreadsheets and applications. But it was kind of together, but then kind of like sub-pockets within that whole pool of applications like we've done in the past. And encourage people to continue to do that in the future, to have some other commission and council input.
Before we go on, do I need to ask for an extension?
On the extension.
Unless you think you can finish the last few items of business in the next 4 minutes.
I absolutely can get through it, but yeah, absolutely. All right, I believe it. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. All right. Lastly, make sure. Lastly, we have boards and commission reappointments, appointments and reappointments that I am presenting here to you all. So I am going to go through the commissions and the names of each, all ending June 30th, 2029. First, we have the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, Annie Adams, with the term ending June 30th, 2029. Quish Hong, term ending June 30th, 2029. Design Review Board, Dustin Alred, with the term ending June 30th, 2029. Historic Preservation Commission, Trent Shepard, term ending June 30th, 2029. Human Rights Commission, Ann Pathen, term ending June 30th, 2029. Plan Commission, Dustin Alred, term ending June 30th, 2029. William Rose, term ending June 30th, 2029. Tree Commission, Paul D'Agostino, term ending June 30th, 2029. Scotty Dissett, term ending June 30th, 2029. Alex Julius, term ending June 30th, 2029. And for Urbana Arts and Culture Commission, Xander Hazel, term ending June 30th, 2029. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember
Yes.
Hersey? Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
All right, and that passes. Congratulations to the appointees and reappointees. Looking forward to working alongside you all. Next item on the agenda is the discussion around surveillance ordinance. Administrator White, did you have anything to chime in on?
At this point, we've provided the suggested verbiage, I guess, from our legal and police department. So it's honestly in the hands of council how you all would like to move forward as to kind of processing some of the recommendations and placing it within the ordinance and then eventually moving to a final vote of the ordinance.
All right. If there's no further discussion, no further business before this body, this meeting is adjourned. Have a great night, everyone.